Welcome, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today I'm going to launch into the Black Dahlia case because this case has so many theories and books written about those theories that it's like, if you want to talk about rabbit holes, we got rabbit holes. And today I'm going to just try to pull it together, look at the evidence, and pay attention to what really matters, and not get all carried away with all the other stuff. So first of all, can you all hear and see me? I like to ask that first. You can see and hear me. Thank you very much, Lisa. I have my new camera on. I keep trying to get a proper everything, and it's just, it's a fancier camera. Now I can't seem to make it work. So I keep adjusting everything, and I don't know if I'm too red, I'm too white, and it changes, my face like changes every 3 seconds, and I don't know what the problem is. So I'm going to keep struggling with it. So regardless of what I look like, please do pay attention to what I say. I'm not here for beauty, I can tell you that. So, hi, Nicole, just joining, and you can see and hear me. Good. Okay. So we've got a good crowd here today because this is one of these historical cases that has gone on forever. I think Jack the Ripper and Black Dahlia are probably the two most historical cases that haven't been solved, and so therefore there's always a new suspect, more interesting suspect, or we've got more details and all that kind of stuff. Doreen says I look great. Well, thank you, Doreen. I'm not sure I believe you because I can't tell from when I'm doing the show. So then I look later and go, what happened to me? So I'm playing around with this stuff, and it is complicated. So, and I bought this really great camera, really super camera. And I've taken great pictures with it. But the reason I bought it was because you can have both automatic and then you can have manual. And so far in 10 years, I've only used the automatic. So you can see where I'm coming from. All right. So let's get started with this before I bore anybody else to death. Just to do my let's see where I'm at. Okay. Now, I just want to mention, because I always have to in the beginning of the show, because otherwise I will not survive. Please do support the channel in any way you can. Even if you just subscribe, that makes me happy. If you don't have money to spend on me and this channel, just subscribe. The more subscribers I have, the better the algorithms work. So subscribe, share on your true crime groups, like it, and hit that bell if you want the notifications of my shows. I'd be happy if you just do that. But if you want to do more, you can join Patreon and support me through there. There's a link below. And if you want to join the Hangouts, yes, you have to join Patreon. And that's during the week. Some people say, I couldn't join the Hangout. What happened? Because the Hangouts during the week are just for my wonderful friends who are putting out extra effort to support the channel. And if you just want a good book, this is $2.99. $2 goes to the channel, and then I have other books down there which I don't make much money off of, but you might be interested because they're books on profiling and crime scene analysis, and I recommend them highly because they're my books. Doesn't mean I'll support the channel very much, but still, I think they're good reading. Okay, that's that. Now let's go to this story about the Black Dahlia. All right, so here she is. I found a few pictures of her, and what I'm going to do first, I'm going to just basically give you the rundown on, who she is and what happened. And you all know I'm not a storyteller. So there's other places which will tell you gorgeous stories and, all that stuff. I don't do that. My point is to profile. So please just accept my Wikipedia short version, because I'm going to get into the point of the show, which is, do we have any good suspects? Has the case been solved by one of these authors who put out books, or is this all, or do we still not have any clue? By the way, Dr. Ahmed, thank you. Dr. Ahmed in Egypt. I appreciate Dr. Ahmed coming here, and everybody from around the world, as well as in the US and the UK, and anybody who can be here at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. All right, let me go ahead. Who was Black Dahlia, and what is this case? Because some of you actually don't know this case, and for good reason, because especially if you're not from the US, You just may not have run into it. When I do cases from around the world, I did just a day ago, I did Peter Falconio, which is an Australian case. And I had no clue about that case, but everybody in Australia knows it. So, I learned a lot. So there may be people from Australia going, what's Black Dahlia? So I'll give you the quick, I like what Carrie has to say. Carrie says, we come here for the analyses. Thank you. Because that's what this show is about. I do not object to going to other shows because each individual has something different to offer. Some people have great storytelling abilities. That's not me. I just don't want to do it. So I do criminal profiling and crime scene analysis. So that's what this channel is about. So you can always, go to another channel and get all the details, and then come here and get analyses. That works. Okay. Anyway, who was Black Dahlia? Her real name is Elizabeth Short, and some people are really sad that she got this Black Dahlia name, and instead of being the person she was, she's this this almost fictional person. But she got the name Black Dahlia. There's an argument over that too. There was a movie called The Blue Dahlia out at the time, and some people think that the media gave her the name Black Dahlia. Other people claim that no, she used to hang out in certain places, and she used to always dress in this black outfit here, just different black outfits. So they called her Black Dahlia. I don't know which one is true, and it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Okay, so anyway, I want to tell you about her. She was murdered, obviously, or we wouldn't be here. But I want to give you a little backstory just to who she was before she came out to Hollywood. What did she do? Okay, so she was born in 1924, and she was a third of 5 daughters of Cleo Short. Cleo is a guy's name in this instance, and his wife Phoebe. And in 1927, they relocated to Portland, Maine, and then they came back to a suburb of Boston, Medford. All right, now this is where it gets interesting. So Short's father, he had these miniature golf courses, which were really popular at the time. And he lost most of his savings in the stock market crash of 1929. And a lot of people went bonkers when that happened. So what did he do? Well, in 1930, his car was found abandoned at a bridge, and it was assumed he jumped into the river. And so, believing her husband to be deceased, there's the word believing, the mother began working as a bookkeeper to support 5 daughters. Well, kind of turns out Daddy wasn't dead. Daddy just ran away and abandoned his wife. He ran away to Los Angeles, which will be coming up in a bit. All right. Now, Elizabeth had some problems with asthma and bronchitis, so she didn't really like the cold weather. And I'm totally on board with Elizabeth at this point because I sure hate the cold weather in Maryland, and I want to live in Hawaii and India and Mexico. So I understand why she preferred to move to warm locations, because this is an interesting part of her life, because she could have stayed where she was. She would have the support of her mothers and sisters. She could have worked at a useful job, but she left the area, and that always puts you in a bit of trouble when you move around and you quite frankly have no skills. I just want to be honest about that. I once went with my sis to Florida, and I was 19. I don't know what the hell we were thinking. Well, let's go to Florida. Let's go to Miami. And we went to Miami. We met some dude who decided, hey, we met him in a bar, and he was like, I'm a singer, and I got a band. And we're like, oh, we want to be in a band. Oh my God. I'm not going to continue with a stupid story, but we did stupid things. So anyway, wasn't the brightest thing in the world, but we were in Miami and had neither one of us had any particular skills. We were very young. So you're just searching around for some crappy work. You have no place to live, and it gets a little dicey. And this is what she was doing. She was moving around to warmer locations. And so I think that's just really important to understand. So she was moving around to these locations. And so she eventually ended up in, and I'm not going to go through her entire life because this gets, it's a lot of stuff. Other channels for that. Anyway, she ends up going to Los Angeles, into Hollywood. And I'm going to guess she had a mixture of feelings about that. One, hey, it's Los Angeles. B, it's Hollywood. Maybe I can become a star. Maybe I can get into the movies. I'm a good-looking girl. She was a good-looking girl. But let me tell you what happens in Hollywood. And I tell you this from experience. And I think this is important to understand because I want you to understand the victim some people say, well, Pat, I had some guys say, we don't care about your life, Pat. Okay, I get it. But my point of sharing this with you is so you understand Elizabeth Short. So this is me. I know I don't look anything like this now. Sucks, doesn't it? But this is me at 19 years old. I too went to Hollywood. One day I just decided I'm going to go to LA. I wasn't really thinking of being in the movies as much as I wanted to model, but I did go to LA. I did do extra work in the movies. I didn't do much modeling. I wasn't very successful. One of the rules I made before I went was I'm not going to sleep with anybody there. I'm not going to play the casting couch routine. And and guess what? I didn't get any work. I got a little bit of extra work. I mean, I worked in like 30 movies, but it was all crappy extra work where I got paid for like, $30 for the day and a lunch. And so you probably, if you really were, there's a couple movies you can still see me in, like I'm in the background going, or eating food or something. But I spent 1 year in Hollywood. So Joe says, blimey, Pat's got it going on. Yeah, I did then. I did. I really did. Oh, well, life goes on and you do other things for fun instead of looking like that. No, but what happened when I was in Hollywood was one of the things I learned was it's hard to get ahead unless you sleep with people. It's hard. I had a producer who took me out to a party one night, and then they were passing drugs around, and I refused, and then he dumped me. And I went to Universal Studios one day for a job, and the guy looked at my photos, these two, and he goes, "Love your legs." And then he's like, "How about dinner?" And I said no. And then he threw my resume across, which was a pretty crappy resume, but still, he threw the resume at me and goes, "Call me when you get into the union, babe." And he kept my photos, because he knew if when I got there, I thought I was a good-looking girl. But when you get there and you look around, you find like there's 500 good-looking girls right in 5 blocks. So you're not that special, especially when you have no talent. And I wasn't very talented. I believe Elizabeth wasn't so talented either. She'd never done acting. She was just a relatively decent-looking girl. So it's very, very hard to get into Hollywood when you're just another pretty face. Unfortunately, it's just a pretty face, and there's tons of them in Hollywood. So what happens is, when you get there and you're just a pretty face and you have no talent to speak of, you need work, and there's different ways to get work. Some is just I did temporary work like Xeroxing. I worked in an Indian restaurant. I did kind of crappy jobs in order to pay an apartment rent with a roommate and keep going to these auditions and extra work. And after a year, I realized it was stupid and I left. But, she was there and she probably couldn't get much good work because, again, tons of people looking for work, coming out to California without any place to stay, without any great training. So here she is in California saying, I got to make it. So what happens to a lot of girls, which is what people don't realize, a lot of girls in California get into a number of different things. One is prostitution. Very, very big deal. Prostitution, because when you can't support yourself, that's one way to go. And let's face it, there's a lot of people out there willing to pay. So there's a lot of girls on the boulevard who are prostituting themselves. They may prostitute themselves by actually standing on the corner, or they may get into escort work, where they're going to at least be with a slightly higher level of guys and make their money that way. But there's another way, which is, I believe, what Elizabeth Short did, which is she didn't want to go into prostitution. What she went into is using men. She would frequent an awful lot of bars, parties. She was hanging around with a lot of men. She loved the guys in the military, using them for food, lodging, maybe a little extra money. And she was playing them a lot of times, and she wasn't actually sleeping with them all the time. She'd make up excuses, and a lot of them complained about that, and they weren't too happy about it. And this is actually an important point for the possibility of why she was murdered. And I'll explain that when I get to all the suspects. So she was she was called by the police a tease. And people can say, well, that's just not fair to say that. But in reality, Elizabeth Short had some personality disorder, in my opinion. I believe she suffered from probably, I would say, which one will I go with? I will go with, I'm just going to sit here and blank. I don't think she's a psychopath. That I don't think. I think she suffers from a relative amount of narcissism because she had a lot of difficulty. Oh, wait, I have some weird sound here. What is that? It's funny. I turned off my sound on my phone and it still came in. Okay, sorry about that. I would say borderline personality disorder. That would be my number one choice. I don't think she's a psychopath, but I think narcissism is there. Borderline personality disorder is the kind of person who can't get enough and doesn't understand other people's viewpoints of them. She's not very empathetic. She wasn't empathetic to the men that she took for a ride and didn't understand how that could actually influence what happened to her. She probably was, one of the things about borderline personality is that it's like a hole, you can never fill it. So you're never satisfied. She had these weird things where she wrote letters to like guys in the military she was supposed to be involved with, but she never sent them. But she kept saying things like, "Oh, we're gonna, I love you, blah 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 blah," but she didn't send them. It's like she had this fantasy life going on because she wanted to be loved. She wanted she wanted the wonderful husband and all that stuff, but she lacked something in her personality. Some people said she was like empty. Or vacant, or there was a void in her personality. And I think that's probably true. And she also had these personalities that switched around. Like if she was certain people, they said, "Oh, she was so sweet and wonderful." And other people said, "No, she was ice queen." So she went back and forth. And my belief is that she was very friendly when she needed something. And when she didn't want what you had to offer, she was an ice queen. Or if she didn't want to give up what she was supposed to give up, you're with a guy, he takes you out, he buys you dinner, he thinks he's going to sleep with you. You go to a motel or a hotel, and then you go, "Oh, I'm not in the mood." Kind of pisses people off. And this is actually a very interesting problem with this entire case. So I think she suffered with borderline personality disorder. Now, that doesn't mean she should be murdered. So please, folks, don't go there and say, "Oh, no." But that helps. Sometimes you do things that cause you to be in the way of somebody. You become a victim because your behaviors draw in certain people. And unfortunately, I believe that's what happened with her. So that's who she was. Basically, I think she was trying to survive out in LA. She wasn't making any progress in the movies. She was taking any opportunity she could to try to get in, try to get by the right people, using men to survive, because she couldn't keep a job particularly well. She needed places to live. She didn't have money. And this was a big problem for her. So she found her way was to get men basically to support her in small. She was with so many men. They said she was like 50 guys. I mean, so if she wasn't prostituting, she was using. And it doesn't mean she didn't sometimes have sex with them in some way, but she probably used them more than she wasn't saying, "Hey, you $50. So she was saying, "Hey, okay, I'll go to dinner. Okay, I can eat tonight. I'll stay at your place, or we'll go someplace. Oh, I'm not feeling too good right now." So she gets a free place to stay, but she doesn't have to give sex. So she was very complicated in that way, but that put her in a lot of danger for, the fact that she was so many different males who might have had issues. So that's the way life works sometimes. Not nice, but it's unfortunate. Now, what happened to her? So let's get into what happened to her. Anna Lisette says she didn't seem to have any regular job at the time, nor was she actively pursuing an acting career. I think she tried, but she kept running into, she wasn't very successful. I mean, it's extremely difficult, and it's not. I don't know how it actually worked back in her day, but when I was doing it, let me tell you, I joined like an agency to do extra work, and oh my God, just time went on and you weren't making any way, and you're being paid $30 a day. I wasn't in the union because there's SAG, which is Screen Actors Guild for people who actually speak when they do their shows. And then there's SEG. SEG is Screen Extras Guild. I couldn't even get into that. And so one day, one of the movies I was working on didn't hire the Screen Extras Guild people, which at least make like a minimum wage. They hired us, non-union people, and somebody from the union set fire to the set. So they were pissed off that they weren't using union people, even for extras. So it's a very complicated situation. So just to be realistic, she was, like many girls, in a place that she wasn't prepared for and couldn't handle. She would have been better off back home, but she wasn't back home because probably back home was boring and didn't offer her enough excitement. And she thought she was a pretty girl and she didn't want to sit around with her, 4 sisters and do bookkeeping work or something like her mom, so she decided, she loved the military. She loved Army guys in uniforms. She probably thought she was going to meet one of those guys and and she supposedly, and I don't know how true the story is, engaged to one of them, and then his plane crashed. So they didn't get married. But even that is questionable. I think she had a very difficult personality and had trouble with relationships because relationships more than like a night or 2 or 3. So there we go. So this is a good point. I think, this is a great point. The war was over by 1947. Guys expecting to ship out in a few days might have been more generous and less demanding. After the war, guys weren't shipping out. If you're in an area where you got a lot of guys, all you do is find one guy one night, and he might just be, she's a pretty girl. She wasn't an unattractive girl, except for her teeth supposedly were really, really bad. So that's interesting. So, they thought they were going to get something. I mean, no guy buys you dinner and takes you to a hotel and doesn't expect something. But one of the first suspects we'll talk about. So anyway, let me go to what happened to her. So here she was, and she was in different, like, eating places, meeting men, and all that kind of stuff was going on. And then this was where she was supposedly last seen. Well, let me read this to you. All right. So on January 9th, 1947, Short returned to her home in Los Angeles after a brief trip to San Diego with Robert Red Marley. Robert Red was his nickname. Now we'll get to him. He was the first suspect, a 25-year-old married salesman she had been dating. Ooh, Red, what you doing? By the way, Red's excuse is the stupidest thing I ever heard. I wanted to test myself, he said. My wife is pregnant and we're having some difficulties in marriage, so I want to test myself and see if I would mess around with a girl. Okay, Red. That's pitiful. Oh, my God. Anyway, Manley stated that he dropped Short off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles and that Short was to meet her sister, which everybody thinks was a lie. Supposedly she was visiting from Boston, but that probably wasn't true. She had already put her luggage in the bus station as a place to keep it because she had no place to stay. And she went to the Biltmore, supposedly to meet her sister. All right. By some accounts, the staff at Biltmore recall having seen Short using the lobby telephone. Shortly after, she was allegedly seen by patrons of the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge down the street, about 3/8 of a mile away from the Biltmore. Now, this is kind of interesting because there's a confusion of whether this was the last time she was seen. So some of the explanations are, so she's in this lobby for a long time and she's making these phone calls. Or is she? Because one of the questions is she really meeting anybody, or is she just trying to catch attention from people going by to say, oh, you poor dear, you don't have a place to stay? You could stay with me, because she did that a lot. So it's really questionable who the heck she was meeting, if she was meeting anyone. And we'll never know that. Unfortunately, there's no evidence. So anyway, eventually she leaves the Biltmore and walks down the street and is gone into the dark. And that's the last time supposedly she's seen. And then it takes almost a week before her body is found. And so there's 2 stories here. One is the possibility that she went and met somebody, or somebody picked her up and kept her in his home for like a week and then killed her. Or this is not even true. There are some that say, no, she was down. She was drinking here. She was drinking there. We saw her in different places. So she wasn't missing for the entire week. Very hard to determine whether that's true or not. So I'm not even going to go there. But so anyway, this is the guy. This is Red Manley, a young fella who supposedly was with her testing out his whether he was going to be honorable to his wife. And then later, if he actually wasn't honorable, they did have sex, even though he said she was kind of cold about it. And then he said, I'm never going to make that mistake again. And then he sort of went insane and ended up in an institution. So, but there was no proof that he was connected to anything that happened to Elizabeth Short. So, but he was the first suspect because he was theoretically the last person that saw her. Now, let's about the discovery of her. On the morning of January 15th, Short's naked body severed into 2 pieces. This is why this case has gone on forever, because it was so horrific. Her body was severed into 2 pieces, was found on a vacant lot on the west side of South Norton Avenue in a place called, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Leimert. Leimert. Sorry, I don't live out there. Leimert Park. Now remember the name Leimert Park because that's important with one of the suspects. Okay. At the time, Leimert Park was large and developed. And so this lady was walking along with her kid about 10 a.m. and with her little daughter, 3 years old, who luckily doesn't know what happened. And she thought she saw this mannequin, a store mannequin, because it was in 2 pieces, like discarded in the park. And so she's like, what? And then she realized it was a corpse. So she ran and made a phone call to the police. Now, and this is the location it was found at. So here you have all the police. You can see it's basically an empty lot. And you see where the car is here? So somebody pulled up and her body is right here. So they didn't like walk far away and try to hide the body. They just basically came and dumped the body there. Now, Short's severely mutilated body was completely severed at the waist and drained of blood, which is extremely unusual. Most serial killers don't waste their time with this kind of crap. So the question is, what kind of killer is this? Who would bisect a person and drain all the body of blood? It was bizarre. And they thought she'd been dead about 10 hours prior to discovery. So rigor mortis would have set in by then. And that's important too. The body had apparently been washed by the killer, like scrubbed. He scrubbed it with a brush. You're very, very careful. Now, Short's face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to the ears, creating an effect known as the Glasgow smile. Now, you can look up Glasgow smile. It's something to do with some gang thing way back in Scotland. But the concept is it makes you a huge smile up to your ears. And in reality, that's not exactly what happened with her. It was more like this. So maybe they're making too much of it, but it was a horrific. So when they found her, it's like, a creepy, creepy thing. And then she had several cuts on her thighs and breasts. Actually, her right breast was like, and entire portions of the flesh had been sliced away. She had a tattoo on her leg, which had been cut away too. And I'll talk about the tattoo in a bit. The lower half of her body was positioned a foot away from the upper half, and her intestines had been tucked neatly under the buttocks. The corpse had been posed, and yes and no. Be very careful when people say bodies have been posed. It may have been, or it may have been that the person just put them out and dropped them, and that's the position they ended up in. So you got to be very careful of that because you can overstep on that, and then you can view both possibilities, but sometimes they overdo that. I mean, there's times when it's clearly the person is posed. Like for example, if you let me see, like Danny Rowling case, a serial killer in Florida. I mean, he killed one of the women and he put her head on a bookcase staring at the door. I'm going to say that's posed. There are other cases where the body has been put in a weird position and then they put like a book in her hand or something. That's posed. In this case, she was lying there like this. Her upper body was like this and her legs were apart. Boom. Was she posed or was she dumped because she was already in those positions? And there's no proof of that. So I try not to overdo it. But the fact that the guy cut her in half and drained her blood and cut a thing like this on her face, I'm going to say those are 3 pretty strong things that this guy's sick. Now, the corpse had not posed. Okay, let me see what else we have here. Okay, so there was an autopsy done, and I just want to point out that in the autopsy, there's 2 things that are really important, which are really creepy, and they don't mention this in a lot of places. So, but I'm going to say them here. It'll demonetize me, but okay. Anyway, what he did was this was kept secret, and this is important when you're trying to determine whether a suspect is telling you a bunch of crap, because they had like 500 people come forth and claim they killed Black Dahlia, which is why I try to tell people all the time, just because somebody confesses doesn't mean a dang thing. It doesn't. So they kept two things secret, and these were two very useful things to keep secret. I often say that one of the problems with serial homicide is police need to go forth and give as much information as possible in order to identify the killer. And a lot of times they keep things secret that are stupid. Like let's say this woman was obviously a sharp knife was used. Okay. Well, you can say she wasn't shot and a sharp knife was used because the killer knows the police already know this crap. So it's not a big fat secret, but it could help you determine who it is. However, there were two things that this guy did, which they kept secret, and I think it's a good idea. One was when he cut the, and this is just, the stories are very limited. So if I say anything that is kind of like you found other information on this, I'm okay with that because this is historical crap. Supposedly the tattoo, which was a little flower, was cut off her leg and was shoved into her vagina, which is kind of a weird thing. Also, supposedly she was shaved, the pubic hair was shaved, and she was also slashed up on the pubic area. And that supposedly the pubic hair was shoved into her anus, which also looked like she had been either sexually assaulted anally with a human part or with possibly just an object. But then this guy stuffed up things into her. So lots of weird things were done in this case. This is pretty extreme. So that's an important part to see how extreme this is. And there are two suspects, which you can say, maybe they went this far. And for whatever reasons they went this far. And I'll explain that. So anyway, now she's dead. So also, this is another important point. At the scene, this I'm going to show you only this. This is a picture of her body covered. I will put a link below, which is a pretty good explanation of the whole thing. It does have another link to the actual crime scene photos, which are pretty unpleasant, shall we say, and I won't put them on my show. So, but I want to point out something else that was, but before I go further, thank you. So, that's amazing. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate you supporting the show. I do have a super chat, which I forgot to mention, and that's really helping me support the show. So thank you very much, Emily. I just happened to catch my eye because it was very bright and pretty. Thank you very much. Okay, let me, and believe me, I appreciate it because we're trying to make this channel survive. Okay, so I want to show you this. This is also important. So you got to keep these things all stuck in your head until the later parts of the show. These are bags which cement used to be in. There apparently are 3 of them. And the theory is that they were used to carry her body. Now, there was a black vehicle seen leaving the scene, looked like sort of like that. So I'm going to say her body probably was, I think there's two seats, 2 rows of seats. So the back seat, I'm going to say it makes sense that the guy didn't want to muck up his car. So he used those bags to transport the body so that blood, if any, the blood was drained from her body. But there may have been a little bit left that just he might have, gotten on his car. So he put the bags under her. What's always been interesting to me is why the devil he left the bags. Why not just pick up the freaking bags and take them with you? And that's a good point. I don't have a good answer for that, but it's an interesting issue. So just want to bring that up. So, okay. So she's left there. Obviously there was a car involved. And this is very important because there's certain evidence which we ought to focus on real evidence and not a lot of made up crap. So there's real evidence, there is a car involved. And the fact that she was tortured, and then all these things were done to her. And then the guy cut her body in half and did all these other things to her after post-mortem. He didn't do it in a field, and he didn't do it in some place where he didn't have privacy. So he had to have a car to move her here, and he had to have privacy. It was probably a home, a house, not some other place where people are coming and going and can hear stuff. He probably had a house which she could keep all this quiet. So those are 2 very important things. The third important thing was that the police said the bisection of her body was so well done. Now, sometimes you have to be careful about when people say things are so well done, because they said that about Jack the Ripper. And quite frankly, Jack the Ripper did not have to be a doctor, and that was ridiculous. And I will do a show on Jack the Ripper and explain why. But yes, he mutilated women, but he had some skills in cutting up stuff, but he didn't need to be a doctor. This was kind of unusual because it was so well done. The theory was the guy literally had to be a surgeon, and that's kind of important. And I am not able to determine the accuracy of that determination. My determination can't determine their determination because I don't have access to all that information to be able to really figure out how much, because I don't see exactly how the cut went and all that stuff. But if it's true that was that well done, that somebody had to know what they were doing. They suggested two things. They suggested a surgeon. They did suggest a mortician, but I don't know how many times morticians need to cut up bodies in half. I mean, when you bring your beloved, who's died to the mortician, you go, could you just cut them in half? Because, and even if the mortician did that, you wouldn't, you don't have to be too careful. So there's some interesting things about this actual bisection. Some say it was done because that's the only way to transport her body. Well, she was a very small person anyway. She wasn't heavy. She wouldn't be that hard to transport. And then even if you bisected her, a lot of people get bisected, but you do it with an axe, you know what I mean? Or a saw. You don't need to be careful because you don't really give a crap. You just want to chop them up and stick them in a suitcase because you live in an apartment and you can't get the body out, But this guy neatly transected, that's a weird thing. So that's another very important part of this case. So at any rate, she's dead. And then what happens here? Who done did it is the question. It took them a while to find out who it was. And if they did find out it was Elizabeth Short. And then they started looking at who could have committed this crime with this information that we have. I've already explained Red, who came up with this silly idea that he was just testing himself. And he just went to didn't really want to sleep with her. Oh, okay. It got excluded as a suspect simply because it didn't make any sense that he was involved with it. And of course, he didn't have any knife skills to speak of. So he got tossed out. So now, where do we go with this? And I will now go to the suspects. And I'm going to start with what I consider the dumbest suspects, and I'll go to the better suspects. All right. So I'm going to use, I read, okay, let me start with, okay, I'm going to start with just, okay. I read 3 books. No, I didn't. I'm lying. I read this book. And by the time I got to this book, I was like, I can't read anymore. I actually didn't make it through his book. I made it like 100 pages and I'm like, I want to throw up. This book, I made it through most of it. And this book, I'm like, I just read who your suspect was. And I'm not even going to waste my time. Okay. These are actually, they're not, I'll get to who's the better suspect, but I'm going to get rid of first the suspects that are so stupid. Let's not even go there. Okay. We'll start with that. Now, let me get my suspect list out. Okay. So, all right. I'm going to start with, and some I have pictures of, but I'll show you the ones I have pictures of in a minute. I'm going to start with a guy named Knowlton. And he was, his name was George Knowlton. His daughter, get this one. In 1990s, George Knowlton's daughter, Janice, began claiming she had witnessed her father murdering Elizabeth Short, a claim she based largely on recovered memories. And I'm very opposed to the recovered memory concept. I mean, there are things we do shove down that we don't want to think about, but there's this problem with people being encouraged to remember things that didn't happen. In other words, they start fantasizing. And then there was, and then sometimes people encourage them. It's like, and where were you when you were 3 years old? I remember being in a dark room. Well, what happened in the dark room? And you go, I think a bad man came in, that kind of stuff. And it's nonsense. It's just nonsense. Anyway, she claims that during a therapy session for depression after hysterectomy, she says that her father had been having an affair with Elizabeth Short, and she was staying in a makeshift bedroom in a garage where she suffered a miscarriage. George Knowlton allegedly murdered Short in the garage, bisected her in the sink. What? It's really hard to do a good bisection in a sink. I don't know what kind of sink that dude has. I mean, it ought to be a huge farm sink. Bisecting her in a sink. Yeah. All right. And then he forced his 10-year-old daughter, Janice, to accompany him when he disposed of the body. According to Knowlton, Short was a sex worker and a procurer of children for a child trafficking ring. Okay, this is a woman who wants attention. I mean, first of all, she's 10 years old. She shouldn't know anything about what this does not. Okay, I'm not even going to go any further with this. Stupid. All right, I'm going to dump that one really quickly. All right, let's get rid of him. All right, now let's get to somebody at least a little better than that. All right, let me put up the ones that the next one is. Let me find the right one. All right, here we go. All right, this guy, his name is Jack Anderson Wilson. And by the way, the book written about that was, remember I just said the one I didn't read is Severed, written by a guy named, what's his name? John Gilmore. And here, one of the biggest problems with historical crimes is people decide they read and stuff, and then they find this person they decide is going to be their suspect. This is the one that interests me. And this is the one that hasn't been talked about because, you can't do a book that somebody else already did. So you got to come up with a new suspect. So you come up with a new suspect, and then you do what you're never supposed to do when it comes to analysis, is that you get your suspect first, and then you try to fit all the evidence to match the suspect. And you just everything, that links him. Oh, see, that makes him this. Okay, so he decided to go with this guy named Jack Anderson Wilson. Now, listen to what this guy is. Wilson was a lifelong petty criminal and alcoholic who was interviewed by author John Gilmore while Gilmore was researching his book. Betcha. After Wilson's death, it's always useful when they're dead and they can't even talk after that, he named Wilson as a suspect, owing to his alleged acquaintance with Short. All right. Supposedly, some homicide detective was going to close in on Wilson based on material Gilmore provided many years later. All right. Okay, here's my problem. Petty criminal and alcoholic. This guy did not have a fixed address, hardly ever. He was truly a petty criminal, did little crappy things. If he had killed Elizabeth Short, she'd be dead in the field, but he would have just beat her. He would have just walked with her someplace and hit her over the head. I don't even know if he owned a vehicle, but he certainly wasn't any surgeon. And he didn't, to have the mindset to take her someplace, to take her back to your place and do all the torturous and crazy things, creepy things that were done to Elizabeth Short. This guy doesn't have the patience for that crap. He just whack her over the head, rape her, and that'll be the end of it. Absolutely worthless suspect. Absolutely worthless. Okay, let's go to suspect number 2. All right, this suspect is a little better, but man, this gets craziness here. His name is Leslie Dillon. And he is the number 1 suspect in the Black Dahlia Red Rose book. Now, this woman wrote this, and she decided that, oh my God, this guy's got to be the one. All right, so who the heck was this Leslie Dillon? Well, it was, hold on a second. Oh, there he is. Okay, Leslie Dillon. He was a 27-year-old bellhop. Now, he was a former mortician's assistant. So there's that mortician thing. Now, again, I don't know where mortician's assistants learn how to bisect people beautifully. I mean, first of all, they're not bisecting the corpses. I mean, you might want to play around with the corpses, do other things to the corpses, but I'm not sure where the bisecting corpses comes in. Now, there is a claim that maybe she was murdered in a location which had a slab table that morticians use, and the person sat there and did these things to her and drained her blood, which the draining of the blood is the one thing morticians do have in common with this crime, because blood is drained by morticians and then, to embalm people. So there's a point there. But if in order to commit this crime, you have to have total access to this location, not stir up any suspicions, and you still have to be able to bisect them. So, but okay, I'll give him a little bit. This guy, okay, now where did he come into becoming a suspect? Let me tell you where that comes into. Okay, this is kind of interesting. He became a suspect when he began writing to Los Angeles Police Department psychiatrist Dr. Paul DeRiver in 1948. Dillon was living in Florida at the time of his correspondence, but had formerly lived in Los Angeles. Okay, so he had been in Los Angeles and was now living in Florida, but he apparently read a lot of true crime crap, and he wrote to the police psychiatrist and said, "I know something about this murder." Now, he read about the story in a case of True Detective Style magazine, in which DeRiver was quoted and wrote to DeRiver regarding his theories on the case. In his correspondence, he mentioned an intense interest in sadism and sexual violence in hope of authoring a book on the subject. Dillon offered up one of his friends, Jeff Connor, as a likely suspect. No, he did it, not me. Over the course of the correspondence, DeRiver began to believe Connors did not exist and Dillon had committed the murder himself. So then they ended up meeting up with, and getting the whole police involved with this. So then after they met up, they had undercover LAPD officers in Las Vegas, and then they drove to California. Then they traveled to San Francisco looking for this guy named Connors. But during this time, Dillon offered up intimate details about the crime that he wasn't supposed to know. Here's my problem. This psychiatrist had lots of issues, and I won't get into all the issues he had, but sometimes people, when they're interviewing you, give you that information so that then you can repeat it back to them, parrot it back to them, and then this guy knew something he shouldn't have known. I don't necessarily trust DeRiver. Is that what his name? DeRiver. I don't necessarily trust him because of his other escapades and his methodologies. So I don't know if he thought, oh my God, this is the guy. And then during that whole thing, he actually gave information to him to make him the guy, to be more believable. Because, if you can solve the case of Dahlia, you become famous. So I don't know that DeRiver didn't have some little, motive there. Anyway, they found out Connors did exist, and his real name was Artie Lane. Lane had lived in Los Angeles at the time of the murder and was employed at Columbia Studios, a favorite hangout of Short, as a maintenance man. However, contrary to popular belief, Dillon could not be placed in San Francisco at the time of the murder. It gets confusing here. In fact, police could never account for Dillon's whereabouts between January 9th and January 15th. So anyway, yeah, they never could prove he had anything to do with anything. And it gets more interesting in a minute, considering the next claim that the same author made. His daughter actually published a book called The Curse of the Black Dahlia, and she expressed her belief that her father had been unfairly maligned for the Dillon affair, because she's saying, hey, my father was this great psychiatrist, and he shouldn't have been screwed over by this. But hey, I don't know what all happened there. But again, there's really no proof linking him at all. Now we get to this guy, and this is where, in the same book, things get even crazier. This is Mark Hansen. Mark Hansen was a Hollywood nightclub owner at whose home Short did live for a short period of time. He apparently allowed some girls to stay. He had a big place, and he let some of the girls stay there. I don't know if he was sleeping with them, wanted to sleep with them. I don't know. It's Hollywood. I would say, hey, you can rent a place for me, and I get you on Monday. It was also near his nightclub. So let's see. Short called Hansen from San Diego on January 8th, making him one of the last people to have spoken to her. Los Angeles County District Attorney files indicate that he made contradictory statements to authorities about the nature of the conversation. Now, here's something very interesting that happened. Let me go to, after she was murdered, there were these letters that, he's one of these guys that called the police and said, hey, I did it. And he really was the Black Dahlia murderer. He called himself the Black Dahlia Avenger, which I think is really weird, because usually when you avenge somebody, you're on their side, but somehow it makes no sense that he called himself the Black Dahlia Avenger instead of the Black Dahlia murderer. I don't know. But anyway, he sent these letters, and here's some of the letters. So he sent, this was the first one he sent, and you can see at the bottom it says letter to follow. Then he sent another letter. I will give up in killing. I will give up. Just a weird way of saying that, because you should say myself. I will give up in Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Why does he only want 10 years? Maybe because he's not going to live that long anyway. So don't try to find me. Then he sent this. Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified. All right. So these are three letters that came, to them. But then he sent these items over to the police. And the items, he did actually send the items, and they were hers. There was a purse and a couple items in the purse, like a birth certificate was in there. And it's very clear to me that the purse was with her. So I don't see any evidence that, she had anything else with her, just the purse, which means anybody could have picked her up, essentially. And she probably had those items in her purse. So nothing spectacular there. But one thing she had in there was this book, this like address book. Is it an address book? And his name was on it. Hansen's name was on the book. Mark Hansen's name. So like, oh my God, she's got a book with Mark Hansen's name on it. He must have did it, right? Now, let me ask you a question. If you killed Elizabeth Short, would you send the police a book with your actual name on it? I mean, I don't think he's that dumb. I mean, one other thing I didn't mention, he also he used gasoline. The Black Dahlia killer used gasoline to clean everything because he didn't want to leave evidence of who he was. Do you honestly think he's going to send a book with his name on it? No. And there's no evidence he ever did anything to Black Dahlia. But now in the book that I was just speaking of, she linked this guy to this guy, even though there's really no proof of that. And the claim is, here, let me see how this claim goes. It's so ridiculous. It's just hard to believe. Supposedly there's this motel that there was this bloody room in, that the owners cleaned up this bloody room. There was like soaked blood onto a bed, and there was feces on the wall, and there was blood spattered in the bathroom. Now, instead of calling the police, the owner cleaned everything up, which was pretty shady right there. But the claim is that he killed Black Dahlia in that room, which I don't believe for a minute, and bisected her on the bed, which I also don't believe. And none of that makes sense. These were, there was like a motel with very thin walls, and like you would hear screaming and all kinds of horrible things happening. That's really not a good place to be brutalizing somebody. But okay. Now the claim then is that he showed up later to check things out because there was some guy that was like maybe a Swede or a Norwegian, maybe this guy, because his name was Hansen. And the fabricated motive is this guy was rebuffed by Elizabeth, and also he had connections to the mob or some such thing, and so he asked him to get rid of Elizabeth, and he didn't mean kill her, and he didn't mean torture her and bisect her. He meant just take care of her. And he was like, oh, what have you done, Dillon? I didn't mean that. Why I hired the wrong guy. I'm going to say if he was connected, well, Elizabeth would just disappear, off into the water, or she would have just been shot and left someplace. They're not going to go through this entire scenario that the killer went through because he enjoyed every living minute of it. So yes, was this guy a sicko? Yeah, he was. Did he read the magazines and show interest in that? Yes, he did. But was there any proof that he committed the crime? Absolutely none. But definitely not him. Definitely not him. Middle guy. Okay. So that's where I'm on those guys. Now let's go to the more interesting possible people. Let me pull them up. All right, here we go. All right. We have 3. And the first one is George Hodel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it Hodel or Hodel. And this book was written by his son. Yeah. Who decided after his father died that, oh my God, my father was the Black Dahlia Avenger. My dad. Oh my God, my dad. I can't believe it, but it's my dad. Okay, so this is where I'm going to talk about the last 3 suspects. All of these guys were doctors. And remember, they said they thought a doctor was involved. So these are the 3 doctors. Okay, so I will go through what would make one of these guys be the guys. Oh my God, you're like 57 comments here by now. I'm like... so many comments. Oh, good Lord. I don't think I can get to them all. Oh, God, that's a lot of comments. All right. And I will get to them at the end, I think, because I just want to get through the 3 guys. All right. So now I will go to George next. He is considered by many, many people to be the top suspect, the guy who did it. And Steve Hodel, is that his son's name, right? Steve? Yeah, Steve Hodel is his son. One of his many kids. He had a lot of them. And he's written like 4 books now, and he's made a crap load of money pushing this idea that his dad, George, is the Black Dahlia Avenger. Why does he believe this? And now I read, his first book is like 500 pages. I got through like 100, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm so done. It is getting ridiculous. Just not working for me. Nothing's working. Not that he couldn't be the suspect, but just that Steve Hodel's linkage, the way he's trying to say all this evidence is linked to him, the way he thinks is so, that proves he's the Black Dahlia Avenger, is so ridiculous and a shame. It's shameful, because Steve Hodel was a homicide detective. And if this is the way he conducted his homicide work, they should go back over all his cases, because that guy has issues. He has massive issues, in my opinion. Really bad issues, like maybe narcissism. I don't know what kind of personality disorder this guy's got, but the way what he is creating is not the way you investigate a case. And so he starts out okay in the book after he brags about himself being the best thing that ever walked the face of the earth. Then he goes into some basic profiling information, and then he goes off on this unbelievable tangent of nonsense, which goes on for many books and apparently was made into a show as well. It's just phenomenal. So anyway, who is Steve Hodel? I mean, George, his daddy. All right. He was let me go back to his early years just so I can say who he was. Where's his early years? Oh, they don't. Wow, how can they left this off of Wikipedia? How dare they? George Hodel was let me see if I can find it here, because he's a actually fascinating guy, absolutely fascinating. And so it's really important to not ignore him. Let me pull up his background, because it's phenomenal. His parents had a reasonable amount of money. Let me put it that way. And he had great opportunities growing up. There we go. Okay. So let me tell you who he was, because you got to know who he is. All right. He was born in 1907, and he was raised in Los Angeles. He was an only son. He was well educated, and he's so intelligent. He scored 186 on an IQ test, and I believe this. I mean, I'm not overly fond of IQ tests, but this dude was smart as hell, brilliant. Okay, he graduated high school at 15 and entered the California Institute of Technology. Now, by the way, even though he was doing that, he also I think he was where did they have that information? How can they not? Hold on a second. I think it was, did he play piano? I'm trying to remember whether they played piano or not. Was it piano? Yeah, I think he was piano. Okay, there we go. I knew it was missing off of Wikipedia. How dare they? So anyway, he was a prodigy. He was actually a prodigy. Played so freaking well as a young boy that he was just famous for that, because of his brilliance in piano playing. Why he didn't continue playing piano, I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, he was a child prodigy. So then he was doing really, really well at the Institute of Technology, but he was forced to leave the university, and this is kind of important, after 1 year, due in part to a sex scandal involving a professor's wife. He had impregnated the woman and wanted to raise their child together, but she refused. The affair between Hodel and the woman caused her marriage to fall apart, and he was booted from the university. And this kind of, to me, shows, well, it could just be a young man who found a hot babe to be with, and he didn't really worry about the standards. Also could indicate that he's got a highly narcissistic personality disorder and really thinks he's just entitled to everything and goes for what he wants. And so I wouldn't be surprised. So at any rate, time goes on. He gets a common law marriage with a woman named Amelia. They had a son, Duncan. And then that was 1928. In 1930s, he marries a woman named Dorothy Anthony, a fashion model. And they have one daughter named Tamar. It's hard to say what her name is. Then Hodel graduated from Berkeley, pre-med, in 1932, and then he enrolled in medical school at the University of California in San Francisco and received his medical degree. Now, to point out, he's a doctor, not a surgeon. That's important. Doctor, not a surgeon. Because a lot of times it's like, oh, see, he was a doctor, therefore he knew how to bisect. I'm not going to ask the doctors out there, how many of you have been bisecting people recently? When you went to med school, did you bisect a lot of people perfectly? I don't think so. That's not part of it. So that he would learn bisecting bodies so perfect makes absolutely no sense. So anyway, he becomes a very successful doctor. He becomes the head of the county's social hygiene bureau. He moves to Los Angeles. And he's got a very confusing marriage thing. He marries a woman named Dorothy Harvey. That was John Huston's ex-wife. He called her Dorero, and that, I think, was Steve's mommy. He purchased this house called the Soden House and lived there from 1945 to 1950. This is during the time. And this is important, too. It was built by Lloyd Wright, the son of Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, it's a landmark. So Hodel was living there with Dorero and their 3 children, his first legal wife, Dorothy, and their daughter, Tamar. Had 2 women there at the same time. And his common law wife, Amelia, sort of showed up also. Anyway, he also was prone to taking temporary lovers. Okay. And some suggest that's how he got hooked up with Short. All right. I also want to point out, he spent some time in France. He hooked up with the whole movement of all this, kind of the libertine movement. And the libertine, sex, naughtiness, art, all that kind of stuff. He was really hooked into that. And he had interesting thoughts about these things. And I'll get to how Steve uses this against his dad to say he was a Black Dahlia murderer. But there was a thing that happened to him. Apparently, he was like, a lot of people are hanging out at his little fancy house, and they maybe had a little orgy thing going on there, but it's not really clear. But anyway, his daughter Tamar was there, and she accused him of raping her. And during one of these things, and a bunch of other people jumped on top of her as well. So this went to court, and he won. He did not get convicted. And there was a theory that she was kind of like a psychopath and was making up stuff because she'd already accused a whole bunch of boys in her school of raping her. So this was kind of in line with that. A lot of weird stuff going with that girl. Did something happen in the house? I don't know. A couple people said it did. Hard to say. He was a libertine. Maybe he thought it was fine if he played around with his daughter. I don't know. Anyway, ruined his reputation. So he kind of left the country and he ended up in the Philippines, having businesses there. And he married the last woman he was married to for 20 years when he died. And so this was when his son came in and decided Daddy might be Black Dahlia. Now, why did he decide Daddy might be the Black Dahlia? He did live in Los Angeles at the time, but there was no specific connection to him and Elizabeth Short. Now, let me show you how this all worked out. Because this is how you write. This is how you don't do detective work. So sorry, buddy, but I'm pretty appalled at this is the way you do detective work. So here we go. After his daddy died, they found this little book. It had pictures of his mother in it and a few other people. And then these 2 pictures of either 1 or 2 women he couldn't identify. And he said, oh my God, it's clearly Elizabeth Short. Now, a whole bunch of people, including Elizabeth Short's family, say, this is not Elizabeth Short, for God's sakes. It's not. And so he based his whole thing that this was his father had met Elizabeth Short. He had an affair with her, strong enough that these photos were taken of her. So therefore, he did know Elizabeth Short and had a thing for her. Absolute nonsense, because it's not even proven to be Elizabeth Short. So how ridiculous can you get? Now, the next thing that he says is the reason that he killed Elizabeth Short. Ready? All right. This is a guy named, oh God, I'm going to forget his name. He's a famous artist, and his name is, let me pull it up here, Man Ray. He was part of this whole thing that Salvador Dali, Picasso, all these people do all kinds of weird art. He did weird art, okay? And he was a buddy of this guy over here. So they were friends, and they hung out at his house together. So based on that, let me show you. This is some of his work, and this is where the rabbit hole becomes very large for Steve, because he really wants his daddy to be the Black Dahlia murderer because he's going to make money off of it. So this is some of the work of this Man Ray guy. This is known as the Minotaur. Minotaur? Can't pronounce that. Minotaur. And Hodel claims, see, it's posed just the way Black Dahlia body is. Now, Black Dahlia body could have been posed that way because she was like, her hands were like this and she went into rigor mortis, so her hands were like all that. Or maybe it's just the way it was, she was thrown down. Or, you know, but even if she were posed, that doesn't mean it was based on this. Then he goes further. Remember the smile? See the smile here? The long lips? Oh, yeah, that's the cutting of Elizabeth Short's mouth. Oh, and then there's this picture. You see? Again, this is Elizabeth Short with, you know, she's being sliced in half. So he takes he looks at all this guy's pictures because he was a friend of his daddy's and all his artwork. And he had a lot of artwork. So he had all kinds of weird stuff, tons and tons of weird stuff. And decides, see, my daddy's into sadism. He's into perverse type of things. There was a thing called the Weimar period in Germany about this time where there was a lot of things about sex murder and there were paintings done of sex murders, and it was quite gruesome. And people got obsessed with it. They were like fascinated by this happening. So he's saying his dad was so fascinated by sex murder and these sadistic things that this is what when he got hold of Elizabeth Short, he used these ideas to pursue that. Okay, it gets worse. Oh, good Lord, does it get worse? Okay, so here's some more. Okay, let me move over here. This is part of his house. Okay, this is a picture from his house. So he claims that Man Ray did this drawing, and the drawing is of two people looking into the distance, and there's an eye here. You know, they're having a quarrel. They're arguing. He claims it's based on this. You see the work here is the same as here. And these bushes coming down on both sides are the people. And then, see, now can't you tell? It's actually a picture of Elizabeth Short lying there in the field with her legs apart and something damaging her vagina. Don't you know? This is the same as this. Okay, yeah, believe that one. Okay, so there's a few more things on that line. Let me look at his house. So then so many things get even stupider. This is actually his house, done by Lloyd Wright Jr. there. Lloyd Wright, that's the son of Frank Lloyd Wright. He did a pyramid style thing at the time. And so now it's this thing, and this is inside of his house. You see, it's supposed to be really creepy pyramid stuff. Oh, yes, that must link to the Mayan and Aztecs. And if you look at this, see this photo? I mean, this picture done of a Mayan ceremony. You see, it's Elizabeth Short. See how her arms are up and her legs are put apart and somebody's cutting her right in half? You see? Now, this wasn't a Man Ray thing. This is just a photo he found in a book. And now this is you see, he had a home that was like a satanic ritual place. And he got his people to do satanic rituals. And there's so many rooms there that he took Elizabeth Short into one of those rooms, and he did like a ritual thing on her, like the Mayans did when they killed people. So you see how that all works out? This is not evidence, Steve Hodel. This is not a shred of evidence. This is your wild imagination and a desire to sell books. Wild imagination, because you can go to anybody's home and come up with stuff that they might have, had a small interest in, and then link it to something else, which there's just absolutely zero evidence that he was killing off women or wanted to have a ceremony killing a woman. This guy was, quite frankly, George Hodel had all the women he needed. Women loved him. He had relationships. He had more relationships than he knew what to do with. Women liked the guy. He had a ton of wealthy friends, artists and musicians and writers. He had wealthy friends. He traveled the world. The guy had a hell of a great life. He supposedly also helped a lot of people in his work, but he did extraordinarily well in his life. I don't see any good reason why he's got so many dark things in his head that he feels like this is not enough and he needs to abduct Elizabeth Short and do her in, or that he was rebuffed by her. I mean, the guy's got so many women. She said, "I don't feel like it." He'd go, take a hike. You got bad teeth. He's not a desperate dude. Can a guy like this get into some kinky stuff to the point of this? Yeah, but There's no evidence. There is no evidence of this, and there's just nothing at all. Now, so then, okay, let me go one more thing he tried to say. So supposedly he had Elizabeth Short's photos, which he didn't. Then he claims that his daddy writes like the Dahlia killer. Now, I'm going to look at this right here, and I can tell you right away, this ain't the same person. Now, you could be trying to fake it being somebody different, but one thing you'll notice, look at the Dahlia killer's writing. Do you notice all the letters lean to the right for the most part? You see the one on the left, George Hodel, they're either straight up or to the left. Totally different. Totally different. There is nothing. The Dahlia killer tends to write I's in a small I instead of a capital I. We don't see that over on the other side with Hodel. None of the letters look exactly like the Hodel letters. There's really nothing here. And apparently a bunch of handwriting experts said, yeah, no match. So again, he's trying to say things that are true, which aren't true. And the only thing, this is literally the only thing I think he's got. Supposedly there was a receipt for some cement, because there were 3 bags at the scene for cement. And he found this somewhere he found this receipt. And it says, in my opinion, it says, if you go look down there, it says cement 2 somethings. Well, there were 3 bags, so okay. There's only 2 here. You know, he did own a home, a big home where they do work. They had a lot of brick work. They had a lot of cement work there. You know, yes, that he might have gotten cement is not unlikely. However, does that mean he killed Black Dahlia because he bought some cement for his home? And the answer is no. Now, in the scheme of things, if you had other evidence, then you could say, well, this is one more thing. But quite frankly, Steve, you got nothing. You got absolutely nothing. And then, you know, Steve loses his damn mind, and he really kind of almost shoots himself in the foot. And the reason I say that is because now he wants to convince everybody that his father is a serial killer, right? I mean, that's real important to him. You know, my dad's a serial killer. He now says he's Zodiac. I mean, there's nothing to link these Zodiac with Black Dahlia Avenger. Nothing. So now his father's the Zodiac killer as well. And then, of course, I think he's also a lipstick killer in Chicago. I mean, he's got his father's everywhere in the world flying around killing women. So he completely makes a moron of himself if he hasn't done it already in the first 100 pages that I read. But that is the worst. And I think it's embarrassing and sad that anybody who is a law enforcement person or a profiler would create a complete bunch of nonsense which has no basis in evidence whatsoever. So I'm sorry, but the only thing he can come up with that even puts Hodel as a suspect is a receipt for cement, and you like weird art. That's pretty bad. So now I'm going to go to the guy in the middle. So who is the guy in the middle? So I'm going to get to where I think the better suspects are compared to Hodel. I mean, Hodel could be the guy, but there's just nothing linking him. So just because you know, he liked weird art doesn't make him, and you know, maybe he's got some sexual things going on, that doesn't make him that guy. And there's a tremendous amount of rage in the killing I see rage in this killing of Elizabeth Short, and hatred and anger. And a lot of times with serial killers, you know, they kind of hate everybody, so it's not a big deal. It could be anybody, but I do believe there was a connection between the two prior to that happening because of certain things. And I will explain that in a minute. Okay, let's go to the guy in the middle. All right, this guy is, let me find his name. This is many names. Okay, Patrick. This is Patrick S. O'Reilly. All right. The reason he's interesting is he was a medical doctor, but again, not a surgeon, who knew Short through nightclub owner Mark Hansen. He actually knew Elizabeth Short. So this works a little bit, that he has a connection. He knows her. According to the files at the time of the murder, O'Reilly was a good friend of Hansen and frequented Hansen's nightclub. It also states, the files also state, he attended sex parties at Malibu with Hansen. Everybody's going to sex parties. I mean, Wow, there's a lot of that going on. O'Reilly had a history of sexually motivated violent crime. This is important. He had been convicted of assault with a deadly weapon for taking his secretary to a motel and sadistically beating her almost to death, apparently for no other reason than to satisfy his sexual desires without intercourse. That's interesting because there is not actual proof that Elizabeth Short was raped. I mean, the anal thing is questionable that she might have been, but there's not real proof of that. So is this a guy that has issues with sex and gets his thrills out of the violence and not actual rape? Further, the files indicate that O'Reilly's right pectoral had been surgically removed, which was similar to Short's body of being. I think that's weird, and I don't know that I believe that's a great point there, but okay. And then it says O'Reilly had been once married to the daughter of an LAPD captain who was also bisexual, which I'm not sure what that matters. Now, also in a Hodel case, Steve Hodel will claim there's a huge police cover-up. And I don't believe that's true. And I don't believe it would be true with this dude either. Because let's face it, he was convicted of assault of his secretary. So it wasn't like the police were keeping, not willing to go after him. They were. So, yeah, I would say interesting because he's got a violent background and he did know Elizabeth Short. Now, the question is, and this is one of the points I want to point out about the interesting issue of the anger, and that the part where they cut off the tattoo and stuffed it up her vagina. It was on, I believe, I hope I'm not wrong. This was on her leg, and when a lady sits down and crosses her legs and shows off something like that, or hikes her skirt up to show something like that. If you're kind of a stalker dude, if you're interested in the girl and she's not interested in you, but you keep seeing that little thing showing you off, that little flower thing, I see your tattoo, but you won't let me have any part of it. And I keep asking you to go out and you keep dissing me and you don't want anything to do with me. One day when I get a hold of you, because I say, hey, you ain't got a place to stay, come and stay with me. And I bring you home, I'm going to cut that sucker up and shove it up you. That'll teach you. So to me, that's interesting. So he is a better suspect than Hodel. Now, my number one suspect, actually, if I had to pick one, and I'm only saying this because there's no way I can do a proper investigation or a proper analysis without having access to everything that the police had. So I'm just trying to help you understand how I would look at this. This guy, his name is, let me find him. Okay, his name is Walter Bailey. He was a Los Angeles surgeon. This is the only surgeon in the whole group that has any kind of, wow, that might work. Surgeon. And he was a very interesting surgeon too, because apparently he did a lot of mastectomies and hysterectomies. Mastectomies and hysterectomies. This guy knows his way around the female body and surgery. So that's very interesting to me. Now, look at the rest of this stuff. He used to live 1 block south of the vacant lot in which Short's body was found. Now, this to me is very important. People dump bodies where they know the area, because if you don't know the area, you just don't know who's around. Let's say I'm going to just dump my body over here. And you don't realize that there's a police officer, a patrol guy who does the beat there, and you're dumping the body and the police guy walks by and catches you. You don't want to go someplace where maybe a gang hangs out, maybe teenagers hang out. You want to go someplace you understand is a safe place to pull your car over and dump your body. He knew the area because he lived 1 block from that area. Fascinating to me. And there's more. He lived there until he left his wife in October of 1946. So apparently, I think she still lived there. So that might have been, don't know. Now get this. His daughter was a friend of Short's sister, Virginia, and had been the matron of honor at her wedding. So he did have a connection to Short. When Baylor died in January 1948, he died a year at, what was it? 1940. Let me make sure I got the time right. 1947. Okay. So he moved out of that location in 1946. Elizabeth was murdered in 1947. He dies in 1948, which is interesting because one of the questions one has is, why weren't there more crimes after that he absolutely committed? Well, maybe because he was dead. Can't do anything when you're dead. That's why if you're going to be a serial killer, that'll kill off your serial homicides. All right, now, when Bailey died in January 1948, his autopsy showed he was suffering from a degenerative brain disease. Now, that's kind of interesting because sometimes if you do start having brain issues, it can invoke violence and rage and paranoia and a whole bunch of other stuff. After his death, his widow alleged his mistress, apparently had one of those who was working with, had a terrible secret about Bailey and was made the main beneficiary upon his death as a result. That may just be bull, but it's interesting. Bailey was never a suspect in the case, and I would like to know why. But many medical doctors and others with medical training were. So why not him? Detective Harry Hansen, one of the original investigators, told the 1949 Los Angeles grand jury that in his opinion, the killer was a top medical man and a fine surgeon. Bailey was 67 years old at the time of the murder. And by the way, this is I think some funny things about that. So there's a claim that, he's 67, he's too old to commit a murder. Hey, I'm 66, I can do you in. I can do you in. I can hit you over the head with something. I can stab you, and I can drag your body, cut your body up, move you. I'm not that wimpy, and this is a dude. So, 67 is not like, you're in a wheelchair. You can commit crimes, and there are serial killers that have been in their 60s and 70s who have committed crimes. So please do not tell me that he couldn't handle little Elizabeth Short. Sure he could. So that just is so nonsensical. One of the other claims is that he cut her in half in order to be able to transport her body because maybe if he was too old, he couldn't do it. He was like too weak. But again, you don't have to, yeah, okay. He didn't need to do it nicely, but if you were a surgeon, you would do it nicely. And then it is easier to transport. You take one part, you put it in the car, on those bags, and you take another bag, you put it in the car, and you put the other part of the body on, you take it there, and okay. It is a little easier to transport. All right. Not objecting to that. Okay. But he had no known history of violence or criminal activity of any kind. Well, that doesn't mean he couldn't have committed crimes prior to that. And people just didn't know. And he was not known to have met Short, even though his daughter was a friend of Short's older sister. So that's the problem. There was not necessarily a linkage between him and Short, that he knew her. But did he? And people just didn't know it. Did he offer her a ride? We don't know. When Larry Harnish of the Los Angeles Times he was a Los Angeles Times copy editor and writer, he began studying the case in 1996, and he eventually concluded that Bailey could be Short's killer. Now let's see what his reasoning is. Although critics of Harnish's theory question whether Bailey's mental and physical condition at the time of the murder would have been consistent with the commission of this type of crime, and I think that he could definitely have committed the crime, that his physical condition and mental condition weren't so bad that he couldn't go through with this. The original investigators' theory that the body was cut in half because the killer wasn't strong enough to move it answers that. Okay, yeah, okay, then she's only going to be 50 pounds and 50 pounds. Harnish theorizes that Bailey's neurological deterioration contributed to his alleged violence against Short. Some have suggested that the secret Bailey's mistress was blackmailing him with that, and that he performed abortions, then a crime, but there was no evidence that was true at all. So going on further, in devising his theory, Harnish consulted retired FBI profiler John Douglas, who advised that the very public location of the dump site was significant, since the killer had the ability to transport the body to a more remote site where it would not have been discovered. That is important. And here, I'm not a big fan of John Douglas, but not everything he says I disagree with. This is true. If he wanted to hide the body, he could have done so. But he didn't. He wanted it to be found, and he wanted to be found at that location. Also, the letters that were then written basically said, hey, I want you to know I did it. And then the question is, why did he think that if he could get 10 years, maybe he thought he was dying and none of this mattered, but then he decided maybe I'm not going to die, so I'm not going to turn myself in. I don't know. This is speculation stuff, which I cannot prove, but I can say the body was put there for a reason. He purposely wanted the body to be found and found at that location. Okay, so So the site was 1 block away from property owned by Baylor's estranged wife, Ruth. So that could be a slap in the face. Douglas also advised that the facial lacerations indicated personal anger toward the victim. Possibly, because most of the anger stuff was here, hitting and slashing and cutting her face. No, she may not. I always think of the cutting of the face as more cases. She was a sulky thing, and she went with him and then wouldn't perform for him. So whoever it was, and he's like, well, you have an attitude problem. Let me help you out with that. You'll smile now. Somebody definitely did enjoy doing all those things, and then the interest afterwards. There was supposedly also feces in her stomach, which I couldn't get much information on, but that's a very bizarre thing too, that if he forced her to do that, because it gave him a kick. He had very, very dark way of thinking. I don't know if this guy had any dark way of thinking, but he definitely had some issues, and the body location was very fascinating, and he was a surgeon. So where does this leave us? Well, my theory is it leaves us with actually not knowing. There's no way that we can figure out who exactly killed Elizabeth Short. There's just no way. And there's definitely no evidence. There's not enough evidence to say this guy did it, or this guy did it, or this guy did it. I tend to lean, if I'm going to lean anywhere, I'm leaning more toward this guy. But I don't have enough evidence that he ever met Elizabeth Short, or there was anything, because I wasn't there at the time and I couldn't conduct the investigation. So I don't know. And I'm not going to write a book and pick out one of these guys and write an entire book and then make up a whole bunch of junk that is just egregious in order to sell a book. So this case needs to be somewhat left alone at this point, to admit we're never going to figure out who did it. There is not very solid evidence against anybody. There certainly is very little evidence against most of these people, and some is just so minimal that it's laughable that they were even considered suspects to begin with. So that's where I stand. I do believe that the person who did this to her, there was a very deep-seated anger, possibly against women in general, possibly against Elizabeth Short personally, that he, at this point in his life, he just wanted to do something that, in his own mind, just proved that he could do such a dastardly thing. And he actually wanted the world to know it. Who would want the world to know that he was a bigger person than they thought? I think he was already pretty much good. So that's why I have trouble thinking George Hodel was it, because he was already a big dude. But, some of these other guys weren't such big dudes at that point in time. Maybe feeling a failure in life. But, somebody had to have the ability to slice her in the way that they say that he did. He had to have a home, because you can't commit this crime, on the fly. He had to have a car. He had to have privacy and an ability to have the time alone with Elizabeth Short. And as far as how he met Elizabeth Short, I mean, theoretically, he could just picked her up on the side of the road because she was desperate for a place to go and she had no clue who she was going with. And maybe they'd never even met before. But maybe he did stalk her. Maybe he did see her in places. Maybe he did want to be with her, or just even for Elizabeth to give him the time of damn day, So it's possible that anger was in him because she wasn't paying him any dang attention. And, that's why he cut the little tattoo off and shoved it up, or just to pay her back. Also, it may be that one reason he's also very possible is since he was physically deteriorating, he may not have been sexually able to do certain things to her. So that normal rape wouldn't happen, but he could still have control and power over her by doing other egregious things to her and watching her and enjoying what he saw. So, yeah, I can't come up with a conclusive suspect, but I just wanted people to understand the way I think about this and how we should look at cases like this and not get carried away with a bunch of nonsensical stuff. All right, I'm going to go back to your comments now. That's the end of my speeches on that. Let's see what you have to say. Maybe I have to start at the bottom instead of the top. Holy God, there's so much here. And because I do want to be able to communicate with you now. Carrie, the question that was it the only murder that Short's killer committed? We have no idea. Generally speaking, it looks like a serial homicide. Usually when you have this level of sadism, and the guy was very careful. He was very careful to do everything that he wanted to do. He had a lot of ability. So it isn't some like, yeah, you'd think he'd done it before or something similar to it. But, this is the one case where I'm thinking it's possible he didn't. It's possible he had these ideas and he had such ability that when it came to the day that he decided he wanted to do this, this might have been his first. And it's not usual, but it might have been. And after that, there's really no proof of anything else. So I could say we don't know. That's Lisa's Anna Lisette says, used her smile and tattoo as bait, and the killer attacked both aspects. This is something I believe might be very well true, because she was what they call the tease, and she was using men. And so she was using what she had, and she was this and the tattoo and, all kinds of stuff. That imprints on deranged people's minds. And that's like, it's not like she deserved to be killed because she did such a thing, but it does imprint on predators' minds. Certain things that set them off in a way that they're like, I'll get you for that. I will get you for that. Yeah, so I think that's very possible. Let me see what this reported. Leslie Dillon's relative lived a block from the dump site. This whole mafia stuff, and I'm sorry, I don't go with any of it. I think it's nonsense. I just do. This is the stuff that in the book, they started adding in a million things that made no sense. It just made no sense. And the problem is, one of the things they'll do is they try to snow you in these books, because instead of going for the basic information, they start adding in 500 different things. When I was reading both the books that I read, I was so exhausted by the time I got, like I said, I couldn't even get through Hodel's book. I just had to throw that thing. I was like, well, I had a Kindle, so I didn't want to throw it. I'll break my phone. But I couldn't go further because I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm tired of the junk you're trying to push on me here. And the million things you say are connected, which have no connections. And the same thing is true with the other book, with the Dillon as a suspect. They just started exaggerating things and going places that were ridiculous to go, trying to prove that he was the guy. Stop doing that. You can't prove he's the guy. He wasn't a surgeon. He didn't have the ability. He was a nutcase. And there was absolutely nothing that actually put him there. So I tend to say that's just, that's another thought that has been there before, Lisa. Perhaps she laughed at him, so he gave her a permanent smile. That is possible. A lot of people have said that could be true, and it could be true. She's like, you're just a jerk. And then you want to keep smiling at me? It's hard. We can't get into the mind of the guy at the time he was doing it. He was, and it was like, Steve says, why did the surgeon want notoriety? He was successful in his own right. Well, it depends. Now, how successful was he? He was a surgeon. It doesn't mean his life may not have been good. He had broken up with his wife. He was doing, who knows what in his mind was great success. This guy had massive success, except for the period of time where he, lost his reputation over the daughter issue and the little sex orgy thing. He had massive success. He was wealthy. He traveled the world. He had gorgeous women. This guy was successful. I don't know about this guy, whether he was super successful. Maybe women didn't like him. Maybe his practice was faltering. I don't know. We don't have enough information, which is why it's very hard to go there. And why would somebody want notoriety? Sometimes when you feel like you're being ignored, and if he was aging and was failing in his life, and let me tell you, now being almost his age, you get less noticed as you get older. You disappear. People don't pay attention to you anymore because you're not young and handsome, young and beautiful. Your life is maybe not turned out the way you wanted it to turn out to, and you become discouraged and depressed and all that kind of stuff. And nobody pays attention to you anymore, and nobody thinks you're smart. And So it's hard to say why the person would do that. But the person who did it was very, very meticulous in covering up. Now, he had the ability. Now, not necessarily the bisection thing. He had the ability and his brilliance to cover up everything. So I'll give him that. But I just don't see anything else that links him. It could have. I'm not saying he couldn't have been the guy. I just think that Steve Hodel completely made up a whole pile of crap in 4 books and a movie and said he was Zodiac too. I mean, it's just, you got to stop some point. you lose your credibility when you don't act like a real investigator. Let's see. Yeah, this is a good point. I like that, Martin. Sounds like Bailey should have been investigated, if only to rule him out. Yes, he should have been. The question, and of course, this is the problem. I don't know why. No, why wasn't he a good suspect? Maybe they did rule him out and we just don't know it, because this is the problem, again, with not having access to all the records. It's possible that there's a couple of possibilities. One is that he could have had an alibi that was beyond belief, and that's why he wasn't the guy. But I didn't see anything about him having that alibi. So was it just that they thought he was too old? Now, this is what happens sometimes with the detectives who are working cases. They will make a determination based on something that's gut. No, my dad couldn't commit that crime. This geezer couldn't do it. I mean, that's what. But Albert Fish. How old was Albert Fish when he was a serial killer? I'm going to look up Albert Fish. He was that nasty guy who ate children in New York City. Let's see how Albert Fish was not young. Albert Fish was. Let's see. How old was he at the time? Let's see. He was committed his crimes in 1924. 50? Oh, he was 54. Okay, 54, 60. Not that. Wow, is that considered old back then? Jeez, that's so young. I thought he was older than that. But if you're, as long as you're physically able, you can do things. But yeah, they should have done that. And I don't know whether they did or they didn't, or they just thought he was too old, so they tossed that. Or maybe they had better suspects at the time they thought were better suspects, so they focused on them. Detectives change, things go amiss. I mean, if they didn't have, and the guy covered up the scene beautifully with all the gasoline he used. He scrubbed the body, he used gasoline on the body. Nobody saw him leave the body. They didn't know who did it. They just didn't have a real link. There was no DNA. There was pretty much nothing. So I can't blame the police on this one. This is a very difficult case. And if they couldn't solve it, yeah. Emily says, oh, that's good to know. Wait a minute, hold on a second. She said, I could at 67 if I had to defend myself. Oh, good. I say some people are pretty strong at 67, 70, even 80 years old. There's some pretty strong people. Annalise says, I don't think the clues about Dr. Bailey got put together until Arthur Hamish sorted it out. I don't know. And I don't know how legitimate a lot of these things are. So that's why I won't be, overly, oh, I know who done did this one. I don't, just because, yeah, they say he ended up with Alzheimer's. Yeah, he could have ended up with Alzheimer's. But here's the thing. When Alzheimer's sometimes begins, it can cause changes in the brain. And there is a lot of rage comes out and paranoia comes out, hatred, anger against people you shouldn't have anger against. And in the early stages, this can manifest so that you are not unable to function. You just have these issues. But who knows what issues he had prior to that? And I don't know. His wife didn't seem to think too well of him. But then it's an ex-wife. So did he have issues? And I don't know. I haven't studied the report. There's no reports I can study on him. Was he a mean guy to begin with? Did he have a hatred of women? Did he carouse? Did he look for women to have sex with? I don't know. Don't know. And so I can't go further with that to say that I can prove his actual behaviors. Lisa says, I never get an invite to a sex party. Well, you maybe need to move to Hollywood. You could get a better chance at that. Oh my God. Let's see what else we have here. She did get a tattoo. It's actually in a number of different places. There's a really cool movie. I'm going to put the link below. I haven't put it up there yet, but by the time, if you're later coming, I will put the link up there. It is now. So speaking of movies, oh my God, I have to mention this because there are two major movies, and one movie is called it's Black Dahlia, the Black Dahlia. Okay, let me pull it up here so I can get you the right people in it. I have to mention this because I watched this movie and I wanted to go kill somebody after I watched it. Brian De Palma. That's who I wanted to kill. Wait a minute. What happened here? Hold on a second. I'm in the wrong spot here. Let me pull up Black Dahlia. Black Dahlia movie. It is, and it was starring some great people. Let me pull it up here. Okay, here we go. The 2006 neo-noir crime thriller by Brian De Palma. And I'm a big Scarface fan, so I'm like, man, that's one of the best movies. It's not like a 5-star movie, but it's like so watchable, and you just can't not watch it over and over again once you do it once. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta watch Scarface. It's great. This was Brian De Palma, and I'm thinking, oh, this is gonna be good. It starred Josh Hartnett, Scarlett Johansson, Hilary Swank, good people. Horrible, horrible, horrible movie. Absolutely a bore, confusing, obnoxious. Can't say one good thing about it. I would be lucky to give that sucker 1 star. All the acting was dreadful. It was horrible. Horrible. Don't watch it. Terrible, terrible movie. However, there really is another good movie, and it's called, okay, what's that one called? This is from way back when. Okay, wait a minute. I watched it. It's on YouTube, so you can watch it on YouTube, which is pretty cool. It is, okay, where is it? I watched the whole thing. Where is it? It is called, Who is the Black Dahlia? 1975. It was Symbolist was in it. And also, Lucy Arnaz was in it too, which is pretty cool. She played Dahlia. And so I thought that Who is the Black Dahlia movie? Yes, 1975 film. And it was starring, it starred Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. and Lucy Arnaz. And Tom Bosley was in it too. This was a great movie. It's not exactly accurate on some issues, but the way they showed it was very, very cool. How they went through the process, what you saw the investigation. You also saw Elizabeth Short going through these different parts of her life, and she would say things, and then they'd freeze the frame, showing that, yeah, she said this, but she's like, well, you never know. Let's say she said something like, well, I'm sure I can make it out there. And then, and so they would freeze it on these little statements that kind of show that's not what happened. And this is how she didn't end up the way she thought she was going to end up. Really, really cleverly done film. Really nice. That's the Black Dahlia film to watch. De Palma, don't watch that thing. Horrifying. Absolutely horrible. But I will put the link in there when I get around to it. Let me see what else you have to say. Oh, really? I did not know that. Really? Anna Lizette says one of the bags at the crime scene was a fertilizer bag, for what it's worth. Really? That is fascinating. Interesting. Well, a fertilizer bag, you'd have to have a garden, right? Again, I'm sure Steve will say, Daddy had that. He had the two bags, cement bags, and maybe he had a fertilizer bag because he had a lot of gardening to do around there. That's actually the best evidence he has for his dad. That's the only piece of evidence I find that he has that. And his dad was kind of a kooky sex guy too. Interesting. I do believe the guy had to have a house. He wasn't in an apartment. He wasn't in a motel. This was too meticulous and too much blood. I think the woman was probably in the bathtub doing. Elizabeth Short was in the bathtub when he was doing a lot of this sanguination thing and draining blood and all this kind of stuff. So I don't think he did it on his bed. You know what I mean, or in a bed in a motel. I think it was done in a bathroom. So yeah, and he had to have time and peace because you don't want to be interrupted. You don't want to have somebody in another room. So I think at that point there had to be, the guy did have to have a house and have a house and a car. So he had money. He had money. He wasn't a drifter at all. He wasn't a drifter. Now, Elizabeth Short was a drifter and a grifter, but the guy who killed her was not. He had a stable life, and to have the house and the car, he had a stable job. So that's why I thought that the guy that was the burglar drifter dude is not the guy who did it. Somebody had to have a relative amount of stability to commit this crime, whoever that was. I take it Steve's book is in the fiction section. No, but it could well belong there. Let me tell you. Let's see. Well, I don't know about the kill of dissecting animals as a child. There's a lot of concepts that in order to be a person who dissects something later, you do dissect, kill animals or dissect animals. But the level he dissected at was kind of high level. So, I mean, in other cases, you could be a taxidermist, you could be, you could just be a person who's like chopping up animals, and that is true. But in this case, it may just simply be that he had the ability to do that. But also, this was pointed out, which I thought was accurate. He had a fascination with blood. There was a fascination with that. And he wasn't afraid of blood, because sometimes people will kill somebody, like jump out of the bushes and beat them because they don't like blood. They want to kill somebody, but they don't want to play around in the blood. That's, but this guy didn't have a problem with blood, which is another reason why they thought if he did surgery, blood would be meaningless to him. It wouldn't bother him at all. I think it was, but the fact that he was interested in some of the other things that he did with the feces and all that, you wonder where his brain is at there. What makes him, fascinated to get into that level of the body, in the sense, the death process and the just how the body functions. Kind of just weird stuff. And somebody's got an issue. What? Suppose he found a hunting and fishing magazine. Would those animals be a metaphor for Elizabeth? Nah. We want to stay away from a lot of fantastical things or creative things. The mind of a murderer, he can have weird crap going on. But as a profiler and you analyze crime, you just don't want to make those huge leaps. You know what I mean? Because it serves no purpose. And that's my whole point. You can imagine anything you want, especially if you want to sell books. If I might. I was in, oh, darn, I don't have a relative that was in California at the time. But if I did, I'm a criminal profiler. I could put out a book that says my granddaddy killed Elizabeth Short. And I could come up with all kinds of weird reasons why I thought he did it. But if there's no evidence standing there to support that, I think it's outrageous to even write a book about it. I think you just don't. You just don't, because it's unethical. They did. Okay, this is a good point. I forgot to mention this, actually. I completely blanked on this. I don't know why. But this is actually this other piece of evidence, which I guess Steve could go with. They did have him wiretapped. They did. And that was over another issue because apparently his secretary kind of croaked from overdose. And they were looking at him as some illegal things. I thought, money transfer type things. And so they did tap his phones. Now, interesting enough, he did know at a certain point that they were tapping his phones and he was doing stuff to annoy them. So there was this claim that he said, well, what if I did? He knew they were also put him on the list for Black Dahlia. He didn't know that they put him on that list. He goes, well, what if I did kill Black Dahlia? So I killed her. Yeah, sure. And then, well, they're going to go out, get information from my secretary. Well, she's dead. Yes, that's interesting. It's interesting. And you can put it in the interesting position. I'm sorry, I meant to add that. So I hope you all stayed around for that. The bags that he bought, maybe his interest in weird stuff, weird sexual stuff, and the fact that he made these comments while he's being, you could make him an interesting possible suspect, but it's not proof of anything. It's not solid enough, is my point. And he wasn't a surgeon. He was not a surgeon. So I don't know that he would have had the ability to bisect her the way they claim he bisected her. So, it's just not enough. And it's not enough for 4 books and claims. And he's not the Zodiac, too. And every other serial homicide that his son decided he did. Let's see. And I said, yeah, but the Aztecs and Mayans had to spill blood so the sun would come up every day, different motives. Yeah. But, there is a truth that fantasy can start with historical things. Fantasy can start with art. So the fact that, his buddy, Man Ray, sorry, I got that guy's name right. Sometimes when I do these shows, I start forgetting if I'm is that the guy's name? I just want to make sure. Yeah, Man Ray, before I start talking crap. He had a friend who did a lot of this sadistic kind of creepy art stuff. And that was a big thing at that time. I say it was a huge thing at that time. And he had an interest in that stuff. So again, if you're doing an investigation, you can look at that and go, that is interesting. You can put it on your list. But you got to come up, if you're going to claim this guy did it, come up with evidence that he could have, that he actually could do the actual bisection, that he actually was hanging out with Short, that anything. But see, there isn't anything. So you make up a huge book and you start coming up with, oh, these pictures are Elizabeth Short, when they're not. And just because he does have an interest in weird art doesn't make him a killer. It makes him part of that whole scene of the libertines. I mean, he was just part of that whole thing. That was his lifestyle. And so I'm sure that all those people who liked Man Ray had a huge amount of friends, and I don't think they were all killing people off. So that's not proof in anything. But yet, sometimes you do have interest in things, and your fantasies can fascinate you so that you want to do whatever you're fantasizing. So yes, it is possible. So let's say there were really good connections that he had, Elizabeth Short, that they were having a relationship, and he had this fascination over this kind of thing, and he had a chamber in his house that was set up as a I don't know, a funeral pyre of some sort. He had handcuffs hanging from the ceiling. A little bit more something. You have to have a little bit more something before you say he did it, as opposed to he's just one of a number of suspects who are interesting. Dr. Med says this is a castle, not a house. It was a huge house, and it was kind of castle-y like. It was a very bizarre, overwhelming kind of, fantastical house. But that was, Lloyd Wright. He was an architect that liked to do a lot of weird things. I want to point out the Weimar government, because this is very true. The Weimar government and Germany brought about an era of prosperity in Germany just prior to the Great Depression. Art, film changed dramatically, but didn't know about the murder links. Yeah, it's called Lustmord, and there's actually, let me see if I'll try to find that link and put it in here later on. It's called Lustmord, Sexual Murder in Weimar, Germany. It's a great book. I actually owned it, and I was so pissed off because I couldn't find it. And I don't know if it's in my storage unit. A woman named Maria Tatar wrote this book. In a book that confronts our society's obsession with sexual violence, Maria Tatar seeks the meaning behind one of the most disturbing images of 20th century Western culture, the violated female corpse. This image is so prevalent in painting, literature, film, and most recently in mass media that we rarely question where it came from. And it says here, this started, she said, in examining images of sexual murder, Lustmord, she produces a riveting study of how art and murder have intersected in the sexual politics of culture from Weimar Germany to the present. So that's when there's this avant-garde modernism, and the sexual mutilation was mixed in there with all this political stuff. It's very, very weird. Now, this was an era that he was interested in, and what was happening in that era. And the artists that he was associating with were interested in the Lustmord kind of thing. So yeah, it is fascinating stuff. Does it make him a murderer? Not necessarily, but it's creepy. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'll put that link in because it's a fabulous book. Let's see. Dr. Ahmed says, if your father's a serial killer in the U.S., you're very lucky. You can get $1 million book deal. Yeah, my father died a number of years ago, and I'm really pissed off that he just was a really nice man. Darn it. So I can't get any money off of that. So yeah, it does help when you have a relative who these days that you can make money off of, because they're no longer around to defend themselves either, which is kind of unfair, So that sucks. But let's see what else we have to say here. Oh, thank you, Carolina. I didn't see this previously. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you. It's very generous of you to keep the show going. And you asked, could the killer be a butcher? I'm going to do my show on Jack the Ripper, and my suspect is a butcher because the way he committed those crimes was butcher-like. This was not butcher-like. So I do not believe he was a butcher, although that could have been. It could have definitely been somebody. If they'd just been hacked up and dismantled, yes, I'd say absolutely. But because of the carefulness of this crime, Jack the Ripper just whacked women on the street and, If he had butcher abilities, he could butcher those women very quickly on the street, the way that they were butchered. But for this, I mean, the guy did a lot of things. He tortured her for a long time. Then he drained her blood. Then he bisected her, and then he did other things to her after she was dead. This is way more than just a guy who just a butcher type. But so I don't think so. And I think they never looked for a butcher for that reason. But you don't want to exaggerate things either. So, if a butcher could do it, you don't want to say he has to be a surgeon. But in this case, I think that's why I'm saying I personally cannot verify whether he had to be a surgeon. But from what I've read, it was so carefully done and going through the backbone area perfectly and not nicking other things. It was supposedly so well done. And the cutting was so clean that they believed that it had to be a surgeon. But I don't know that I can prove that. So I have to leave it as maybe, maybe and most likely. Let's see what Sandra says. The Avenger refers to some transgression of Elizabeth that needs avenging. Okay. Kind of like that. It's a weird way of stating it. But yeah, he was avenging something about her that she did. Perhaps he's avenging her behaviors. So he's blaming her for why he has to do it. He said it was justified, didn't he? He said it was justified. And maybe because he considered her a tease, that he spent money on her, took her someplace, gave her a place to stay, maybe. And she had the audacity not to put out. Lied to him, cheated him, and she deserved it. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's the way to look at it. He wasn't avenging her. He was avenging her behavior. So very, very good point. I like that. I like that a lot. Let's see. What do we have? I wonder if Black Dahlia Avenger was from someone who knew what happened, who was just trying to give a clue. No, they absolutely believe it was him because he sent, after he called and he sent the letters, he actually sent in the things he said he was going to send in, and they were her purse and everything in it. So no, I'm pretty sure at that point the guy was playing with the police. And that's a pretty unusual thing. A lot of, Hollywood make you think that every single serial killer likes to have a, go at the police, cat and mouse game, but that's just not really true. That's pretty damn rare. So it does happen occasionally, but BTK did it. Who else? I'm trying to think of all the people that did do it. There are definitely those who did, but the majority of serial killers want to get away with what they want to commit the crime and get away with it. They don't want the body found, or if the body's found, they don't want to leave evidence that gets them caught. They don't want to talk to the police. They don't want police to have a clue who they are. They want to keep committing serial homicides, one after the other, after the other, after the other. So that's one. So the question is, why was this guy so sure of himself that he'd never get caught because he didn't leave any clues, that he thought he could play with the police? Or was he also possibly, I say in this particular guy's case, thinking, I'm going downhill anyway, what the hell? So if I think I can get away with it, but hey, if they catch me, no biggie. At this point in life, this guy was doing great. He was having a wonderful life. So I don't think he would want to take that risk. That's why I find it hard to believe Hodel would need to play with the police, because he had huge businesses. He had all the women. He had so many. He had a great life. I mean, just face it. Would he want to take the chance? And if he was going to take the chance of kidnapping her, or abducting her, or taking her to his lair and doing this to her because he enjoyed it, would he want to take the chance on leaving her body exposed and taunting the police? Or would he just get rid of her? Just get rid of her so nobody would ever find her, and he'd get to have that thrill, but he'd go on with his life and the great life that he had. So I find I have a real hard time believing that he would have left her body to be found and taunted the police. I think that's a person who's got real ego issues. I don't think this dude had any ego issues. Guy had ego issues. He was very angry, very, very, very much enraged over something. And I don't think if a girl turned him down, I don't think she's going to be enraged about that. Oh, look, she showed me her leg and then wouldn't let me have it. I have so many damn women, I don't know what to do with them. So I can't say, that's why he's not my top suspect. I just can't go with it. I think it's somebody who is not doing so well in life, who's smart enough and definitely has the ability, but has other issues. So let me see what else we have here. I'm going backwards a little bit, and then I'll go back down to the bottom. Let me go back down to the bottom and see what you have to say. Let's see. No, I'm just going ahead. Oh, yeah, it wasn't Hodel. I mean, Steve Hodel. Yes, who wrote the book on mainstream television. So yes, and I think he got let me look it up. I think he got a movie too. Steve Hodel documentary probably. Yeah, here we go. 48 hours. Yep, 48 hours went for it. Black Dahlia, Steve Hodel. Yeah, you can find that on YouTube. So yes, and he was on Court TV. Oh my gosh. Steve Hodel. He's on. Oh good Lord, he's everywhere here. So yeah, he's made a bundle off of this. He has, and he's continuing. He has this website, and people are so obsessed with it. He's got thousands of people just, he put something up there. It's one more piece of evidence that Daddy did it. And then everybody goes, oh my God, that's so amazing. And I'm like, oh, Lord God Almighty. There's a long rabbit hole down to the center of the earth. Emily says, yeah, it was 48 hours. Yeah. Thank God for Google. I wouldn't know these things. That's it. Oh, let me see what you, Gretchen essay. In the Yorkshire Ripper case, there was a man known as Wearside Jack who taunted the police and pretended to be the killer. But I think the Yorkshire Ripper just carried on the killing until he was caught. Yeah, there's a what? Wait a minute. I think she was killed on a gurney. I don't know how we'd know that. I mean, we don't know that. That's a coin. She died from. She was hit in the head, and she was having brain bleed, and then the guy cut this when she was still alive. So so she was bleeding to death slowly, so that he could enjoy watching her bleed to death and die slowly. That didn't have to be on a gurney. She could have been tied up. She could have been in a bathtub. She could have been standing. She could have been sitting. Who knows? Honestly, who knows? We don't. We just don't know. And then once she basically died, can you basically die? I think you just die or you don't. When she died, then at that point, he decided to do the more things to her once she was dead, because then there were the things were post-mortem damage to her body that he did, and then eventually the bisection, and then then he bled her to get rid of all the rest of the blood in her body, which is really interesting because you don't really need to do that to dump a body. I mean, there's something in your head that makes you want to do that rather than just say, hey, the girl's dead. I'm just going to chuck her in the back of the vehicle or in the trunk and take her someplace and toss her. Why do all these other things? Except because we also see that he shaved pubic hair, put it in her anus, and then he cut off things, stuck it in her vagina. I mean, doing all these weird things. So he's playing with the body. And one thing people do, especially when they get into stuff like coprophilia, with fascination with feces, and then making her, that he would have made her do before she died if it was in her stomach. That's a little bit sketchy there. But the continuation of messing with the body after death, very similar to like Jeffrey Dahmer, who liked to eat people after he killed them, is because not only did I do this to you when you're alive, but even when you're dead, I can continue doing stuff to you. See, I control you even after death. Look what I am doing to humiliate your body. Ha, ha, ha. This is a big, cheap thrill. I can still play with you. I could have sex with you. I can chop you into pieces and possibly eat you. There's things I can do to you, even though you're dead. So I have my fun before you're dead, and I have my fun after you're dead. So that's a pretty sick psychology. How would you transport a dead, bloody body? Well, it depends. You can eventually people don't chop up bodies to normally, and they don't normally also bleed them dry. That's a really rare. So essentially, you get a tarp or something, something that you can let them sit there long enough to stop bleeding. And then you can also, if they're in a bathtub, you can wash them off. And once you stop bleeding, and you can wash the body and make it nice and clean, and pick up the body with the coagulated blood in it, because now it's not moving, and stick your body on a tarp and take it away. So no, that's done all the time. So the fact that he wanted to bleed the body is just bizarre. I mean, it is. That's why some thought he might be a mortician, because they do that stuff. And so sometimes you do things that you have behaviors in your life that you've already done, so that is comfortable to you. So but would a mortician or a mortician's assistant have the ability to do the bisection? And that's the question. And I can't answer that. I really can't, because I think it seems extreme, because I don't know that that's part of being a mortician, or being a regular doctor. I think it is a surgical thing, but maybe they've exaggerated how beautifully she was cut. I don't know. So that's funny. Sadly, there weren't Walmart murder kits in those days. Yeah, Walmart could get into the business and probably make some money. You're pointing out here, plastic garbage bags weren't invented back then. I suppose bleeding the victim makes more sense when all you have is cement and fertilizer bags. Well, again, once the body stops bleeding, it stops bleeding. You just put them in the bathtub and wash them out. They wash. Eventually, they don't bleed anymore. I mean, dead bodies don't bleed. They may be mucky, but they don't bleed. So that's why if you wash them up, you can. There's a lot of things you could take wash the body up and take it away, and that doesn't require you to bleed the body. I mean, it's extremely rare. So really, really extremely rare. Emily says, I've heard of some sick, twisted murders, but this one probably takes the case, with the exception of cannibalism. Yeah, this was an extremely cruel murder. I mean, I think Jeffrey Dahmer actually was not as mean, because he killed them nicely, and then he ate them, and they weren't feeling they didn't know that part of it. So the fact that she was tortured in such a horrific way, especially, they point out that when the guy cut her mouth like this. Can you imagine that you're screaming, you're in agonizing pain? Every time you go, it just makes it worse. So the actual pain she went through trying to scream or choke or breathe because her face was cut open, that's pretty horrible. Just plain horrible. No, wait a minute. I'm trying to get this one. But why the fascination with blood? Double sacrifice? No, I think we do too much, Steve. Every time there's a case comes up, there's something to do with blood. It's always about, say, satanic worship, and I just don't believe it. There's no evidence in this case about that at all. This was a private thing too. Oh, that's something else I wanted to point out. This wasn't a satanic type of thing. This was very private. The things the guy did would disgust other men, even who were doing satanic worship. They'd be going, don't be doing that. That's disgusting. So this was private. It was him and her together. Private. It was his own little sick fantasy. So I say the two possibilities are, one possibility is you like to see people bleed. You like to see people bleed because that's taking their life away. It's watching blood come out of people's bodies is a big thing. You know what I mean? It's like, it's horrifying, and it could be horrifying and pleasurable, or you could be a surgeon and like, I don't mind blood. I see it all the time. It's not a biggie. I don't know which way it goes in this case, but the satanic thing, I don't see it anywhere at all. Yes, this is true. However, yeah, let the body hang till it bleeds out. Yeah, that there has to be like you have to do something to cut the. I'm not sure how you can put a tube in and do it like morticians, or I think you can cut an artery and blood goes out of that way. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but yeah, you can do that. You can hang her upside down. That would work. Well, maybe it's seen degradation and mutilation at some time in the life in the First World War, maybe. Well, that's an interesting point. sometimes things that happen when you're at a certain age, absolutely brutal, horrific, terrible things, are stay with people for many, many, many moons. And then later on in life, they're like, this is still part of me. I've seen this. I want to see it again. I want to do it. I want to be more powerful. Yeah. I mean, we don't have any proof of any of that. And, most people don't go through war and come back and decide to do what the guy did to Elizabeth Short. So it would still be extreme rarity. No. Yes and no. Okay. If her death were so personal and extreme, could it be someone who knew her quite well? I don't think so. I mean, oftentimes we look at boyfriends and stuff when somebody's like stabbed 100 times or that somebody beat somebody to death. Yeah, that can be very true. But in this case, there's so much sadism involved in it, and such peculiarities. I would say no. They probably did not know her well. He might have known her or known of her, had paths cross. She might have turned him down. He may have stalked her. Well, I don't know that they were, I wouldn't say an interpersonal relationship of any sort. I don't see that in this. No, I don't see that. Let's see what else we have. Let's see. So they say it's one of the just one of the most fascinating crimes ever. And then I say, well, unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to know the actual truth of this, and we can leave it at that. There's a lot of crimes that go unsolved in the world. A lot of people don't get the attention that Elizabeth Short got. Just so many innocent people who get murdered, and then the murders just go unsolved. I mean, that's why we can put unsolved homicides in the internet and come up with hundreds and hundreds of them. But most of the time, you just don't get the press. This one got the press because of the obvious mutilation issue and because she was relatively pretty. If she'd been a dog, if she'd been a dog and maybe a street prostitute, she was a known street walker, and they just figured John killed her and she was not attractive, I don't know that it would have gotten the attention. I think the only reason Jack the Ripper got the attention is because there were so many of them so close together. And so in spite of the fact they were prostitutes who were getting murdered, they were gory, brutal murders on the street. And it's like, who's running around London doing this? In this case, it was just one incident. And I think if she hadn't been beautiful-ish, I mean, I think she's a pretty good looking woman. And wasn't a known prostitute. I think that led the papers into, making this a huge story. So otherwise, she might have gone into, history as just another one. So, no, that is not true, actually, Joe. Mutilation of the face often indicates the killer knew the victim. Not really. Serial killers like to mutilate faces too. I mean, no. I think that's one of those myths that keeps going on and on. Same thing when they say, he stabbed her 100 times. It must be that it's personal. Not necessarily. Serial killers stab people 100 times all the time, because I think it's fun. Or the person pisses them off. So you can have a rage crime by a total stranger. So, and his rage is, you didn't do what I wanted you to do. You're not cooperating. Rage can be against your girlfriend who left you, but your rage can also be just because, you pissed me off. So stabbing somebody 100 times does not necessarily mean that you knew the victim, nor cutting up their face, nor sometimes when they find a body and the killer has covered the body, it's like, because he feels ashamed. No. At times maybe he's wanted to hide the body so nobody will find it as quickly. Maybe he thought it was funny to throw the blanket over her face. Yeah, here, I'm done with you. So, these are a lot of myths that run around, and it's a very dangerous thing when you're doing an investigation to not let these myths get into your head so that you go, clearly he must have known her and been in a relationship. Therefore, I'm going down this road when all these other roads are open and I'm only going this way because I've decided this myth is true. So we have to stay away from that. We can think about it as possibility, but we don't want to let that be a truism for us, which will interfere with our actual investigation properly. So let me see if any more here I can do before I go make myself some food, because now I'm really hungry. I'm just going to look back just here for a second. You have all said some great comments here. I just really, really appreciate that, because that's why I like doing live, because you all have some really fun things to. I say fun, it's a homicide channel, but very interesting and good questions and good comments, good thoughts. And one of the reasons I believe in a team in general with any kind of investigation is that we all can come up with every question. So we overlook something. We miss a piece of evidence for some reason, like, oh, I didn't know that, because there's so much information, you just sometimes can't register it all, or you just didn't ever hear that, or for whatever reasons, you didn't think it was important. And somebody goes, wait a minute, what about this? And you go, oh, that is interesting. That's good. So when you have a team, you can keep one person from just running off in bad direction. Theoretically, have enough of a team where you can question everything, not knock each other down, but put all your thoughts in there, do your evaluations and do your determinations, and look at the evidence and say, okay, what way should we go? And maybe there's really two paths. Why don't you go look at this path and we'll go look at that path? Let's go through the suspects and let's put all our thoughts together. Now, that's a good thing to do, because sometimes when you have a small department and there's one guy handling a case, you just hope you rolled the dice on the right guy. And so, this, I think the reason this case went unsolved is because there was just no freaking evidence. I mean, there was no DNA. They had no fingerprints of the guy. Nobody saw him do it. They never found a location where there was clearly, a person killed. They just didn't have anything. They just had nothing to arrest anybody with. And I don't know, they could have screwed up the investigation. It's true. Maybe they didn't investigate the right people. Let's say, for example, it was this guy that I think is interesting. And let's say it's Steve thinks this guy's interesting. All right. Let's say these are two suspects, and they were. What if somebody never went out to one of their houses and looked where they needed to look? There could be evidence. There could be evidence somewhere that just never was found. And maybe the police bypass that. And meanwhile, the guy's gotten rid of the evidence. It goes, I lucked out on that one. They got here too late, or they missed it when they were here. Ha ha. Don't know. So I can't tell. I can't say whether it was a really greatly done investigation or whether they, dropped a few of the balls on the way. I don't know. But I do know that we're not, at this point, probably not going to ever actually solve it, but I think we can at least be rational about it. And that's my point of my channel, is let's be rational and not go down too many crazy rabbit holes. So, oh yeah, they do. Oh, you can. Oh, no. I'm not sure how many narcissistic killers worry about DNA. Oh, yes, they do, because they know that'll link them. They absolutely know that'll link them. Back in the day, there was no DNA, so you didn't really have to worry about it that much. But it is true. They can look investigators in the eye and swear, no, it doesn't work that way. Okay, they can't look, if the DNA is found and it links to you, you're screwed. Now, your last point, it was planted inside the victim. Interestingly, that's rarely used. It's rarely something that gets them off, although you are correct. It could happen, because I've always said, the easiest thing, in my opinion, is that, you go to a park, you'll find condoms, used condoms in a park. You take a condom, you take it to put a little water in it. There you go. It's in the victim. It's on the victim. You can do that. So there are ways to get hold of semen and put it on a victim. Or in a victim, and then somebody else looks like they did it, and you say, hey, it's not my DNA. Or if you can claim that my DNA is in there, but somebody else did that. But here's the thing. Most of the time, that's not going to work, because usually when they come and get you because your DNA is there, there's enough other linkage to that crime that DNA will maybe seal the deal. But it's not usually the only thing. although it can be. But there's usually some reason why, usually the reason your DNA is there because you did it. Oh, yes. Okay. Interesting you bring this up. Janine says, I read Elliot Layton's book, Hunting Humans. I think Pat would approve. Actually, I like Elliot Layton. He's one of the few I actually do like very much. I have 2 of his books. I think they're both excellent, and I do have Hunting Humans. There's a lot of stuff that's written. I just go, it's a lot of nonsense. It's a lot of mythology. It's a lot of garbage. People read them and get all excited, and it's just not really accurate. I like Elliot Layton. He is one of the rational ones. When I do my I'm going to get to one of these days, guys. When I set up the school thing, I'm going to put in each one of my categories, in each one of my courses, I'm going to put the books I think people should read, and his is going to be in one of them. So his book will be in the serial crime section of my YouTube channel. So what? Well, when you point out, it sounds like you got away with murder. I hope it's rare. Getting away with murder is not rare, unfortunately. Serial killers get away with murder more than anybody else because usually they're not connected to the victim. That's usually a stranger. Boyfriend killing girlfriend, man killing wife killing husband, those kind of things. Those get solved much more easily. Gang shootings get solved more easily. Most of our cases get closed. And one thing I will give George Hodel credit for is that in the beginning of his torturous book, he does point out that most cases are solved by solid, good police work, not brilliant detective work, because there's links. It's a matter of interviewing the people, doing good interrogations, getting all your evidence, getting CCTV, finding the guy's car, looking for evidence there, getting to the house, all that kind of stuff. It's not brilliant. It's not, like Sherlock Holmes stuff. It's just doing solid work. So most crimes can be solved that way by doing good, solid police work because there are links. Serial killers, on the other hand, are very difficult because usually they're strangers, and you find a dead body. You find a body in the bushes, woman raped and murdered, and you haven't got a clue who it is. And by the time you figure it out, well, maybe you never do. Maybe 20 murders down, he screws up, and you catch him by accident. Usually it's maybe a traffic stop, and he's caught. And then you link him back, and you go, oh my God, he's committed 20 crimes. We can close 20 cases now, but he got away with 20 of them while, I had no idea who he was. So, let me see. Yeah. So this, that is, well, that is actually, okay. Who did the banality of evil? I don't know that they're normal psychologically. I don't know that I'll agree with that. It depends what you consider normal psychological. There's a lot more narcissism and psychopathy in humans than people want to admit. And a lot of times they cover it up better than we think. So yeah, I think there's just more of it than we realize, and at different levels. So, but no, Emily says, I'm curious about your class. Hopefully budget allows for it. Oh, okay. My point of the class is I'm going to have online, which is why I'm just hoping I can get really good support for the channel in general, not get demonetized so that advertising pays, anything that can support the channel in general, because the courses I want to put up all going to be open to the public, just like these live shows are open, and anything else I do is actually, the hangouts are for just the patrons, because we're a small group that get together and chit chat and have fun, and they're supporting the channel. But then I make it public so everybody can see it. Everything I put up is going to be public. So the classes I put up, the courses, are going to be small bits of information that anybody anywhere in the world can access at any time. So that detectives who want to learn more about, for example, psychopathology and the psychology of violent crime, they can go to that playlist I'm going to have, and they can say, okay, I want to know, what is a psychopath? Click. And while they're driving to work or sitting in the squad car, they can hear my bit on that. And then they can say, okay, what about serial homicide? And they can go to each one of my playlists, and there might eventually be 50 to 100 different pieces of that I'm educating, different pieces of information that I'm going to explain things. So you can pick them up bit by bit by bit, but it's all going to be free. I could do courses, because that is the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to get your YouTube channel and then sell courses. But if I do that, I feel like I'm going to not achieve what I want to achieve, which is allowing this information to be out there for everyone so they can learn. And they don't have to spend money doing it. Now, the books, those are expensive, but I'm going to try to do some readings from the books. Like, I'm going to take the most important things out of the books so that you don't have to buy the book. Because let's say, for example, Elliot Layton's book, Hunting Humans, he's got some really good points in there. I will then do a little thing on Elliot Layton's most important points. And therefore, you don't have to buy the book. Authors are going to hate me. Don't do that to my books. Buy my books. But I do think I want to bring out some of the points of the best books, because those are important for people to know. And then, of course, you want to learn more. You go to Amazon, you buy the book, or you go to eBay, you buy the book, or wherever you get it from. And you can buy some of these books pretty cheap. So it depends how much you can put out little by little. But my information will be free, and you won't have to pay for it. So that's why I say, please support the channel, because if you can afford to support the channel, you support it for everybody. So, at any rate. And you're most welcome. That's my hope, that I can offer that part for free. I'm going to be writing more. I have my books that are for sale, and they're in the links below. And I will be writing some more fiction books, and those will be for sale. And again, they'll be at low prices. Like my fiction book, Only the Truth, is $2.99. It's intended to support the channel. So Amazon gets 99 cents, and I get $2. So anybody who buys Only the Truth and wants to just read a good story, $2.99, $2 goes to the channel. So any book I put out from now on will be a low-cost book that will help support the channel, because I'm done with publishers. I'm just done with publishers. I will be just publishing and myself self-publish, and then I can keep the costs down. So, oh, thank you, Emily. Well, it's YouTube has opened up a whole new world for me to be able to do the education I've always wanted to do. And I didn't have that opportunity on television. So, I got better makeup and lighting. But I never could say anything, because I kept, you only get a soundbite. It's like, so Pat, what do you think? I say, well, my belief is, he's really, okay, thank you very much, Pat. And you're like, I didn't get to say anything. So here I can say whatever I want. And if people get bored, they can just go away. So at any rate, so there's, and book, well, but that's, I want to point this out about books are in library. Most books are in the library so they can still be found. Absolutely not true. Libraries have gone down the toilet. I'm telling you, what libraries do now is they put out the junkiest books, because they say that's what people read. So you can't find most anything in the library. However, just to be clear, you can't find it in the library, but they can order it from another library for you. So I've been able to get some really unusual books. I go into the library and they got nothing on the shelves. Half their shelves are empty now. They just have computers sitting around in fireplaces. And I will say, I want this book, and they will search the entire United States and it will be sent. People don't realize you can do that, but you can get it sent from another library in your county if they happen to have it, or they'll send it from wherever they have to get it, including some amazingly, important libraries. They will find it for you, and you're like, whoa, So you can get most any book through the library system, but they will have to usually order it for you. My books, a few of my books are in the library here and there, but you won't find most of my books in the library. You won't. You won't find them in the bookstores either, because they give you a very short period of time unless you're super, super, super big book, So the super big book will stay in the that'll be in the library and in the bookstore forever. But people, not my book, will go in for like 6 to 8 weeks and whoosh, they chuck it out, And the publisher doesn't have that much pull, because it's the way it works. It's the publishing industry, and publishing through the publishing industry. not much fun. So I'm giving up on that. Oh my goodness, that is so nice. Thank you, Lisa. Oh, you're so sweet. Help the channel. Thank you very much. You don't know how much that means to me, because this has been, it's tricky. But I did just, by the way, I am up to 3,000 subscribers now. So thank you guys very much for supporting the channel that way as well. I mean, I don't have any kind of 500,000 subscribers or 1,000,000 subscribers. I don't do makeup. But, you know, I don't care as long as I can keep this channel going and be able to basically serve the public and you know, do the kind of content that's useful and that I'm good at doing. And, you know, I'm not good at doing other things, but, you know, this is my style. And this is the way I want to teach. And so it's not going to be as popular as other methodologies, but as long as I can make it work, I'm happy to do it. So thank you so much, Lisa. Well, I want to see what this, wait, I have to see what you have to say here. A medium-sized university town I know had 2 books on Jack the Ripper. Both were yard sale paperback copies of Patricia's Cornwell. Oh, God, not the Sickert. Oh, isn't that awful? The worst, stupidest theory ever Patricia Cornwell did on Sickert, the artist, Walter Sickert. And this is what this is their representation of Jack the Ripper in the library. Oh, thank you so much. I'm trying to read your name here. I got to get in close. Ursa Bruin. Thank you so much. That is so wonderful of you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. This is, I'll live to come back another day. I'll live to come back another day. Oh my goodness. So sweet of you guys. Well, this it says here, just think you're building a really good library of videos for people to binge on as they discover you. Well, thank you. I hope so. And one thing I'm hoping to do is when I start doing the courses and have all the different small bits, because those aren't going to be live. Those are going to be like 10-minute bits on specific educational topics. But I'm not going to be explaining how to analyze crimes. So hopefully people are interested will look at those to learn bits and pieces of all of these things to get that information and education. But then they'll come over to the live shows and the case files. That's what you can, if you're looking for something particularly, go to the case files and look for the case you're interested in. And then I will, you know, these shows will be here forever to then see how I analyze things of the different cases. So I'm hoping both will be successful, the school aspect and then the live and case file aspect. So you can, you know, put the 2 of them together. So that's, you know, there's 2 ways of learning. One is that way and one is the other way. And together, I think it will really help people. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you so much. Lorca, you're just wonderful. Oh, fabulous. I don't know about that. But thank you so much. And just, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I just, I tell you, it's, I know it's kind of funny because I accidentally did the super thing here and super chat, and I was against it, so against it, and then I accidentally did it. And it's turned out to be a blessing because it's really starting to help keep, you know, improve being able to survive, you know, this keep the channel going. People don't realize about right now, I would say I make about $1 an hour. You know, and normally on my regular work, I make $50 an hour. And if I want to keep doing this, I'm giving up doing that. So $1 an hour doesn't quite work too well. And then there's cost because I bought 2 books this week. So that was $20 right there. And I think I paid for that stupid movie too. So, you know, right there is $25 just even to do the show. And then I bought the $200 camera. You know, so people don't realize how much goes into it. And you have to pay for StreamYard every month. So there's lots of costs. And I'm not trying to make y'all feel bad, but that's why I'm so appreciative of people trying to support the channel, because it's a toughie. And, you know, I had hoped it was just going to be all advertising, but since YouTube demonetizes most of my stuff, and this is a gruesome crime, so they're gonna thumbs down me on this one. You know, so I think it's going to be demonetized. So I will have no advertising revenue off of this one. But I want to do cases that people are interested in. So I'm just right now, if I can get at least 50% of my stuff monetized, I'll live with it 50% demonetized. But I won't stop doing the things that you're interested in because I'm demonetized on it. Because this was fascinating. This is a really fascinating case. I've never really looked into it heavily. And so I'm glad to have done it. I mean, you all keep suggesting great stuff and I keep learning from all the things you're suggesting. Oh, Joe, thank you so much. So all your efforts and information are entertaining and always truly appreciated. You're marvelous, Joe. And go to Joe's channel, by the way, Joe Stunner Boxing. He's great. It's a great boxing channel. And I, if you saw my thing on which Joe was not kind enough to put a link to, which is my thing on Reuben Hurricane Carter, which was my video from last Sunday. And my brother-in-law was a world champion boxer. So I've known boxing for a long time. So when I did the hurricane thing, I was like, yeah, this is great because it's boxing, man. And then Joe has been around with his great boxing channel. So it's kind of fun to reconnect with boxing. So thank you, Joe, very, very much. It's awesome. Pat, start an Amazon store. I do have the links. I do have links below that do go to Amazon, but it's just that you make very little off of anything because, if you buy one of my regular books, it's $9.99. I get 5 cents or something. So the links are below. So if you're going to buy my books, please do go through the links. Maybe one day I'll put Pat Brown's favorite things, and I'll include my favorite stove, which is $1,500. Buy that, and then I'll maybe make a little more. What in the world? Are you kidding? Oh my God. Really? Oh my God, that is so sweet, Emily. It's early, but next Saturday is 39 years of sobriety for me, sharing my gratitude. Oh my God, Emily, that's unbelievable. Thank you. That is the sweetest thing ever. Oh my God, and congratulations. 39 years of sobriety. Whew. That's really amazing. Because, I know from the fact that, see this stuff? It's only Diet Pepsi, but I've been trying to quit this habit for the last 40 years. And I haven't been able to do it. And it's just Pepsi. So Diet Pepsi. And I know it's no good for me. That to be able to do real sobriety is just phenomenal, Emily. So congratulations. It's just great. And now I'm starting to know you all as my friends too. So it's like, it's cool to see positive things like that. And thank you so much. It's just absolutely freaking amazing. God knows I appreciate it. Thank you. That is just really cool. That is truly amazing. Oh my goodness. What did I just hit? Okay, wait a minute. Yeah, Humanimal says, that's amazing, Emily. Congrats on amazing milestones. You betcha. I mean, that's something else. Oh, Gretchen, thank you so much. Another super sticker from Gretchen. This is just so nice. So absolutely nice. Wow. I mean, I never know quite how to react when, people throw money at me, and it's for the channel. It's for the channel, but still, it's like, it's a unique position to be in. So, but I thank all of you for the amazing stuff. Tom says, congratulations, Emily. I've been sober 5 years myself, probably stopped counting over 30. Wow. Long as I've been alive. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. So you've got a lot of well wishes here. That's for darn sure. And it's always amazing to me because, unfortunately, we're having a horrible drug problem with opioids, and just so many new fancy drugs that are coming out, destroying people's lives right and left. And of course, alcohol has always been a problem as well, just for as long as man has been on the earth. And it's just, not only does it, we do it in the beginning because it's something pleasant and all that, and then lives just go downhill, and we lose family, we lose friends, we lose employment, and we become victims because, a lot of people are victimized because of they're using drugs or alcohol, and they put themselves in a situation where they make poor choices or are desperate. Like, I don't know, Elizabeth Short really wasn't much of a drinker. She did get arrested once for underage drinking, and then she did start drinking, but she supposedly wasn't a big drinker. But, you end up in situations where you become desperate and you don't have a place to stay. And if you do sometimes alcohol and drugs, you will go stay with people who you shouldn't go stay with. You'll take rides with people you shouldn't take rides with. So all kinds of things that, your ability to think properly or make good choices just goes downhill. So, I mean, I think we really ought to support people in never starting. But if they can stop, we'd definitely support you for being able to stop. That's amazing. Because I know you also, help other people know that they can. and know that what a difference it can make when you stop, then you get your life back, and having a good life is worth it. So that's just amazing. So, wow, very excellent. Wait a minute, I gotta see what Gretchen. Wait a minute, I gotta see what Gretchen has to say. I was in the hospital about 3 years ago, and your podcast. Wait a minute, my podcast on Madeline McCann made 5 days on my IV drip bearable. I have podcasts on Madeline McCann. I don't think that's my stuff. What podcast? I don't have podcasts on Madeline McCann. There are very good podcasts on Madeline McCann, and I have spoken on some of those podcasts. I've been interviewed on them as a guest. That whoever ran the podcast had me on. I personally did not have podcasts on Madeline McCann, so I have one video here on Madeline McCann. I do have that, and I had blogs on Madeline McCann. I do have a lot of blogs at the Daily Profiler on Madeline McCann. If you're interested in them, you can go over there. I have a lot of stuff I wrote through all the years. I no longer really do the blog because I don't have the energy to do more than one thing. But you can go to the Daily Profiler. Just put in Daily Profiler Pat Brown, and you come up with my blog, and you look at Madeline McCann, and there's a huge number of things I wrote over many, many years. So, yeah, I think it was when I was being interviewed. It is kind of funny though, because I've done so much over. I started doing television, I think, in about 2000 somewhere. So it's been 20 years. So I did stuff before that, and then I did blogs and all kinds of stuff that I did. And a lot of times I just don't remember doing it. So people say, "Oh, I saw you here," and I'm like, "Really?" Don't remember, and sometimes I do. They tell me I said something, and I look it up and go, "Oh, did I say that? That wasn't too good." Hope nobody else finds that one. Oh my goodness. Oh, so anyway, I guess I should let you all go on with your lives. You've been fabulous today. I really had a good time. I'm going to check to see how the lighting thing worked out here, because I really don't know whether I look ridiculous or not. And since I don't color my hair right now, it's really problematic because the lights will turn it either sort of blonde, or then they'll turn it totally gray. And it actually is it's a very odd thing. It's like I got the stripe now, and then I got the leftover blonde hair. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just been coronavirus, and I just gave up on cutting my hair every month and coloring it because it wasn't working. And I said, so maybe next year, I'll have blonde hair again. We'll see. Oh, that's very nice of you. Let's all hit the like button for. Wait a minute. So halt drinking. Oh, that's an interesting one. Sinclair method to halt drinking and stop drug. Wow. Sinclair method. Never heard of that. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you very much. So hit the like button. Oh, I appreciate that. And Lisa says, whoops, ions. Whoops, I'm not sure what that is. Lisa says, thank you much for an excellent show. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. Haven't figured it out yet. And don't forget, feel free to put in the comments below. We can continue talking in the comments below. And also, if you have ideas for another show that you really, really want me to do, you can always put that there too. I haven't made up my mind on next week. I usually, try to get through one show before I have to think. Oh, and if you missed it, just yesterday I did the show on what really happened to Peter Falconio. That's an Australian case. I have now every 2 weeks I'm going to do Asia or Oceanic case. So I did the Peter Falconio case, which is really interesting. So if you missed that one's just up as well. So anyway, I'm going to go actually cook some food, and I don't know. Actually, I'm only dinner for one, so sometimes it's like I'm lazy, but I think I'm going to actually cook. Yeah, I'm going to make something nice tonight. I'm not sure what yet, but something nice. I have actually went shopping, which is so unusual for me. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much, Sandra. Great show. See you next Sunday. I hope so. I hope I see most of you here. It's great to have a great group here. It's a lot of fun that way. And that's why I like doing live, because when I don't do live, I actually find it very difficult. It's just because there's nobody there, and it's kind of depressing. So anyway, so thank you very much. It's been great to be here, and I will see you soon. And thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it.